Chapter 678. Supreme-grade origin stones were just supreme-grade origin stones. Among the many types of origin stones, supreme-grade origin stones were already of very high quality. Most of the time, supreme-grade origin stones were even faster than some elixirs. Therefore, some experts would treat supreme-grade origin stones as life-saving elixirs. They were placed inside. They were waiting for an opportunity to appear. Unless it was absolutely necessary, they would not take it out and use it. A supreme-grade origin stone was almost equivalent to an existence that defied the natural order. A supreme-grade origin stone like this contained a huge amount of energy that was enough for a Yuan monarch powerhouse to cultivate for a year. During this year, a Yuan monarch powerhouse did not need to do anything. He only needed to absorb the energy within a supreme-grade origin stone to increase his cultivation base. If a supreme-grade origin stone was added to this supreme-grade origin stone, it would not be strange for it to break through and become a divine weapon. Most of the time, supreme-grade origin stones were also used for the cultivation of a supreme-grade origin stone. However, supreme-grade origin stones were as rare as supreme-grade origin stones. Not to mention possessing it, even wanting to see it was an extremely difficult thing. Now, the Qi family had actually found a supreme-grade origin stone and gifted it to Li Zhongjio in the form of a fragment. However, this fragment was a treasure that could not be exchanged for with hundreds of supreme-grade origin stones. Not bad. Since this matter had already passed, Li Zhongjio did not care about it anymore. If he kept thinking about it, Li Zhongjio did not know how much time he would waste. Yi Shiwen kept the fragment of the primordial stone. It was better than nothing. It was already a very good thing to be able to get a fragment of the primordial stone in this era. Dou Linger and the others could only feel envy in their hearts. When Li Zhongjio returned to the Heavenly Star Medicine Manor, the first thing he did was make a trip to the library. The old man had completed his task well. At the same time, he had also worked very hard to help Li Zhongjio search for this medicinal ingredient. Therefore, he didn't come to the library for a long time. Instead, he randomly grabbed an elder to come here. After that, the old man went all over the world to look for medicinal herbs. Li Zhongjio didn't see this old man, so he just let it be. After that, he casually strolled around the academy and heard that these people seemed to be discussing Lan Kun recently. After all, Li Zhongjio's limelight had passed for a long time and he had not appeared for a long time. Many people were guessing whether Li Zhongjio was dead or not. Even though Li Zhongjio was not in the Sacred Flame Royal City, the situation had never calmed down. The competition between the few princes had also become extremely intense. However, the 9th prince was the first to suffer a blow. The 9th prince's subordinate clans had already been suppressed to the point where they were almost completely wiped out. In addition, the vice commander of the city guard army had actually rebelled. This made the 9th prince immediately want to distance himself from this matter. He didn't dare to hesitate or linger on this matter. If he was really accused of rebelling and selling firearms, he would be in big trouble. If he was convicted of the crime, the 9th prince would not be able to protect himself. The Spring Flower and Autumn Moon Pavilion. Since Li Zhongjio had eliminated most of the experts from the poison sect in the southern region, it had gradually gained a foothold in the city. It had also maintained a very good relationship with Li Zhongjio's Li Chamber of Commerce. The Pan family's fate was naturally very miserable. Du Liani naturally would not let the Pan family off. Inaction was a mistake in itself. Therefore, Du Liani did not let the Pan family off. Up to now, the 9th prince's forces and arrangements had been abolished. In addition, the 9th prince had a good relationship with the young pavilion master of the Changxing Pavilion. The 9th prince more or less bore some responsibility. Now, there were 7 battalions under the city guard army. The strength of the Tusk battalion had increased by leaps and bounds during this period. Its recent momentum was also quite fierce. If this continued, Wang Ding would be able to take over the position of deputy commander in less than half a year. This was surprising. Wang Ding, who didn't have anyone supporting him, was actually able to reach this stage. The main reason was that the Tusk battalion under him was too powerful. He was even able to defeat 2 of the other battalions during the army competition. What did this mean? It was equivalent to having an extra battalion of soldiers. This level of training was not something that could be achieved by ordinary people. If this continued, the Tusk Battalion could be trained to the level of one of the 4 trump cards. This was no longer the strength of the City Guard Army. This terrifying breakthrough was really shocking and unexpected. However, Wang Ding did not forget that the reason why he could reach this stage was because of Li Zhongjio's nurturing and opportunities. This matter would naturally be brought up later. On the morning of the second day, Li Zhongjio and the rest of the students came to the square and waited. Kuan Erasher stood beside Li Zhongjio and introduced the changes in the past 2 months. First of all, the Genius Tower had been broken through 3 days ago. Now that the 15th floor had been opened, the Genius Tower had truly entered the next era and level. What's there to be proud of? Li Zhongjio said indifferently. The Genius Tower had a checkpoint of 7 floors. Since the 14th floor had been broken through, the following 7 floors would be very simple. With Li Zhongjio's current strength, he could easily break through the 20th floor and beyond. The main thing was that Li Zhongjio had already seen some of the things behind, so there was nothing to be proud of. There's nothing to be proud of. If you have the ability, go and try it. Someone heard Li Zhongjio's arrogant and ignorant words and immediately stood up to ridicule him. There were not many people gathered in the square, but the person who came up was someone that Li Zhongjio knew. Gusi. When Li Zhongjio saw Gusi coming forward, he immediately frowned. To be honest, even if this person was asking for a beating, if you rushed up and beat him more than 10 times, it would be annoying. This was not even a challenge at all, so why did he always look like he was courting death? I might as well just kill this kid, Li Zhongjio thought in his heart. But soon, Gusi moved aside, and a figure walked out from behind him. This person looked a little unfamiliar, but looking at the way he walked, it was obvious that he had some foundation. Even Gusi was willing to be his little brother. Boss, this person is the one who broke through the Genius Tower, the 3rd year Qian Wuji. Wasn't Dou Ling ranked first before? Now it's this guy. Kuan Erasher said beside Li Zhongjio. The person in front of them called Qian Wuji was the guy who was ranked 2nd on the alchemist ranking. Because he was always suppressed by Dou Ling, Qian Wuji worked hard to surpass this woman. With this hard work, he rushed to his current position. After coming out of seclusion, he received even more attention. He enjoyed the attention and worship of the people around him. For Qian Wuji, this kind of thing made him really happy. Now, the entire Heavenly Dawn Medicine Manor had to give way to Qian Wuji. Everyone who saw him had to call him eldest senior brother. And now, when he appeared in the square and was ready to accept the admiration of everyone, who knew that he would hear someone slander him and look down on him? Some people are only good with their mouths. Don't let your mouth be cut off one day. When that time comes, let's see what else you can do, Qian Wuji said with a ruthless face, as if he was already thinking about when to find someone to cut off Li Zhongjio's mouth. Chapter 679. Li Zhongjio naturally saw Qian Wuji. Qian Wuji was short, broad, and fat. He was clearly a short winter melon. On his face, there was a thick, pitch-black mole. The long hair on the mole extended from his nose to his chin. Let me tell you, even if you have such a big mole on your face, I will beat you up until your mother can't recognize you. Li Zhongjio pointed at Qian Wuji and said. Li Zhongjio's tone was extremely unfriendly as he directly ignored Qian Wuji. He didn't care who Qian Wuji was. If Qian Wuji dared to utter another word, Li Zhongjio might really pounce on him and beat him up. This little brat only knew how to act tough in front of an old man. What was there to act tough about? Wouldn't it be great if you just quietly did your own thing? Why do you like to act tough? And when you act tough, you especially like to run in front of Li Zhongjio. Li Zhongjio naturally couldn't be polite. You are Li Zhongjio, right? I know you are not convinced. How about this, you and I have a bet? In a while, in this secret realm, we will see who can last the longest. Whoever loses will be an alchemy boy for a year. Qian Wuji wasn't a fool. He wouldn't be so easily angered. To be able to get first place on the alchemist ranking and surpass Dou Ling, he had to have some extraordinary skills. Qian Wuji wouldn't be careless even in these aspects. As he spoke, Qian Wuji stroked the long hair on his mole. Trash like you doesn't deserve to be my alchemy boy. You should eat my shit for a year. Li Zongjio said without any trace of politeness. Hearing Li Zongjio's vulgar words, the surrounding people couldn't help but cover their mouths and laugh. Kuan Erasher, who was beside him, also burst out laughing. Ha, eating shit, ha, that's quite suitable. Boss, look at his mouth, it's as big as a toilet bowl. Kuan Erasher also pointed out this crucial point. Immediately, Li Zongjio couldn't help but laugh. Hearing this, the surrounding people laughed even more happily. This instantly caused Chen Wuji's heart to explode. These two damn things actually dared to use his most painful point to mock him. You're courting death. What Chen Wuji hated the most in his life was when people talked about his sore spot, his big mouth, and the mole on his face. In fact, it wasn't a mole. It was a birthmark. Immediately, a terrifying mental energy fluctuation erupted from Chen Wuji's body, and an incomparably terrifying storm was set off in the surroundings. It seemed to have formed into several extremely fine flying needles, which flew towards Li Zongjio and Kuan Erasher at the same time. These two people deserved to die. With Chen Wuji's status, even if he were to publicly violate the school's rules and teach these two arrogant fellows a lesson, he believed that not many people would come forward to blame him. Therefore, Chen Wuji also unscrupulously launched an attack. In fact, there was nothing wrong with saying such words. After all, Li Zongjio and Kuan Erasher's words were really too unpleasant. In terms of right and wrong, there were still students who stood on Chen Wuji's side. However, Chen Wuji slightly overestimated his own strength. Before the flying needles formed from mental energy could reach the two of them, they were completely incinerated by an invisible flame. Sensing the appearance of this flame, Chen Wuji didn't dare to be careless. He instantly withdrew his mental energy to prevent his mental energy from being damaged by the flame. The one who attacked was not Li Zongjio, but Kuan Erasher. Li Zongjio also looked at Kuan Erasher with slight surprise. He didn't expect Kuan Erasher to be able to cultivate the residual yang fire to such a degree in such a short period of time. Now, Kuan Erasher's level of mastery had even surpassed that of Mr. Lon. Little shorty, if you want to die, I can send you on your way. Kuan Erasher said coldly. With the increase of his strength, Kuan Erasher's temper wasn't so friendly. Moreover, Chen Wuji's attack was so vicious. If it was an ordinary person, they would definitely be injured by this move. Therefore, Kuan Erasher didn't hold back. His eyes were full of cold killing intent. When Chen Wuji saw this, he was instantly stunned. A mere first-year student actually dared to challenge him. Immediately, a cruel smile appeared on his face. You're Kuan Erasher, right? When you kneel in front of me, you'll know what it means to be short. Chen Wuji clenched his fist and said. Then he pointed to the ground in front of him, as if he wanted Kuan Erasher to kneel in front of him. What? Do you want to have a life and death duel? I think the two of you don't want to go in. At this moment, the atmosphere was so tense that the surrounding people didn't even dare to come close. They were afraid that if the two of them fought, it might spread to them. Wouldn't that be very innocent? The person who came was Vice Principal Chi Dan. When Vice Principal Chi Dan rushed over, she immediately suppressed the momentum of the two people. Kuan Erasher also withdrew his thoughts and stopped arguing with the other party. Chi Dan also looked at Li Zongjio in surprise. Hey kid, you're not dead yet. Li Zongjio, the devil incarnate who wreaked havoc in the heavenly palace, hadn't appeared for a long time. Now that he appeared in front of her, it made Chi Dan a little surprised. I'm still far from death. Li Zongjio said angrily. He didn't expect Chi Dan to be so arrogant now. She actually dared to talk to him like this. Back then, this kid followed behind him and tried to please him. Is everyone here? Chi Dan looked around and said. Then, she didn't count the number of people and directly waved her hand. Let's go. Those who didn't come will be disqualified. The number of people who were able to enter the secret realm was not small. At a glance, there were close to 50 people. If that was the case, then this secret realm really wasn't that great. Li Zongjio and Kuan Erasher followed behind. Chen Wuji and the rest were behind them. They stared at the two people in front of them with resentment and hatred. These two are really arrogant. I'm going to make sure they don't get anything in this mystic realm. It's time to teach them a lesson. Otherwise, they will really think that no one in the Heavenly Star Medicine Manor can take care of them. Gusi, who was at the side, was also fanning the flames. He had long wanted to humiliate Li Zongjio and Kun Erishur. He wanted to return the pain and humiliation that Li Zongjio had inflicted on him by twofold, threefold, or even tenfold. This time, he couldn't let go of such a good opportunity. With Qian Wuji taking action personally, it wouldn't be difficult to deal with these two people. Chapter 680. Why didn't Shueiyue come? Li Zongjio asked Kun Erishur as he walked. Previously, Shueiyue and Kun Erishur were quite close, but now, he hadn't seen Shueiyue for a long time. Mo Suli and Mu Qingyun saw her, but they just greeted each other. They weren't really good friends. After all, Mu Qingyun didn't agree with some of Li Zongjio's methods. Shueiyue seems to have something going on at home. She doesn't want to tell me. I don't know what's going on. She hasn't come to class for a long time. Kun Erishur scratched his head and said, obviously, this matter had been troubling him for a long time. However, if he wanted to take care of these things now, it seemed that he was still a little lacking. Therefore, Kun Erishur was also desperately trying to improve his strength during this period of time. Kun Erishur was also very clear about this point. Only by improving his strength could he solve any problems. Just like Li Zongjio, Kun Erishur hadn't seen Li Zongjio being troubled by anything. Take some time to understand. Just as the two were talking, the crowd also came in front of a huge stone door. Around the stone door, there were impenetrable mountain walls, and they looked more solid than ordinary mountain walls. At the door, there were two old men sitting cross-legged on the stone platform. Judging from the surrounding dust, the two seemed to have been sitting here for a long time. When they saw Qi Dan coming with people, they opened their eyes. Two elders, I've brought the students to enter this secret realm to train. Even with Qi Dan's identity, he was still very respectful to the two people in front of him. When he said that, he also cupped his hands. Well, the strength of these students this year seems to be a little weak. One of the elders could not help but say as he surveyed his surroundings and looked at the various students and disciples before him. Since even the vice headmaster had to be so respectful to this person, the other students naturally did not dare to say anything. Why didn't that girl come? The other person also looked around, but didn't see the person he wanted to see. His heart sank and he was obviously dissatisfied. This made Chidan's face look quite awkward, because he didn't know where that girl was now. In this year's batch, only Qian Wuji is slightly worthy. Wuji, you go in first. The elder who was mocking these disciples at the beginning said. This elder's name was Elder Bai Ku, and the other elder was Elder Sui Rong. The two together, they were once the famous Ku Rong duo in the underworld. Now, they were in the Heavenly Medicine Manor, helping the Heavenly Day Medicine Manor to guard this secret realm. People couldn't help but sigh. However, there was no need to doubt the strength of these two. Elder Bai Ku had a good impression of Qian Wuji. Now that he saw Qian Wuji here, he naturally had to greet him. Under the envious gazes of the crowd, Qian Wuji came in front of Elder Bai Ku. Thank you for your praise, Elder. Wuji doesn't deserve it. There are so many talented people in our generation. How can you let me go in first? This opportunity should be given to my junior brothers and sisters. They are the future pillars of the Heavenly Day Medicine Manor. Qian Wuji went forward and said with an extremely hypocritical tone. Li Zongjio realized that Qian Wuji and Guisi's superficial skills were of the same origin. What kind of person taught these two to be so good? No need to be humble, go in. Elder Bai Ku said. Then, with a slap of his palm, Qian Wuji was sent flying into the void. Qian Wuji rushed into the stone door. Just as he was about to hit the stone door, he realized that the space in front of him fluctuated. Then, Qian Wuji's body merged into the stone door and disappeared. Seeing that Qian Wuji had such a special treatment, the disciples below were envious. This was the benefit of being strong. Li Zongjio wasn't in a hurry. He wanted to see what was going on first. After all, this was his first time in the secret realm. He didn't know what was inside. Those who have previous experience can go in first. As for the rest of you, listen up. Although this secret realm isn't too dangerous, it's inevitable that something unexpected will happen. If you encounter a seal that you can't break through, you have to retreat immediately. Elder Sui Rong said. As for what kind of encounter you will get, it will depend on your luck. It was as good as not saying anything. These new disciples still had no idea what was inside. They only knew that people could die in here at any time. I heard that there are layers within this place. Every day, a restriction will be released. If one is able to break through it, one will be able to train in the next area. If one is unable to break through it, one will be ejected from the original area 3 days later. Kuan Erisher said. In other words, when you enter first, you will encounter the first area. If you can't break through to the next area by the second day, you can only cultivate in this area for 3 days. Then, you will be automatically ejected from the secret realm. If you can continue down, you will be able to stay in the secret realm for a longer period of time until you can't break through to the next area. Why is this different from what Do Ling said? Li Zongjio couldn't help but look at Kuan Erisher. It sounded like they were in a completely different place. Didn't they say that there were many statues? It seemed that for someone of Do Ling strength, these seals were nothing. Therefore, she didn't care about them. The previous strongest person stayed in here for 21 days. That's equivalent to cultivating in the 7th area. When he came out, he also had a great breakthrough in his cultivation. I will also stay for 21 days. Kuan Erisher rubbed his hands together as if he was looking forward to what would happen next. When most of the people had gone in, Yi Zichen suddenly opened his eyes. Li Zongjio and Kuan Erisher went forward together. You must be Li Zongjio. I advise you to keep a low profile. In this world, there are many capable people. Elder Baiku looked at Li Zongjio, who had stepped forward, and said in an indifferent tone. He had the attitude of a powerful expert as he commented on Li Zongjio. Just guard the door properly. Why are you talking so much nonsense? Li Zongjio said disdainfully. Then, his body disappeared into the boundary in front of him. Chapter 681. Only Elder Baiku's face was left, and his face instantly turned purple. As elders, they didn't have the qualifications to enter this secret realm. Even someone as strong as Li Zongjio couldn't barge in. Therefore, after Li Zongjio and Kuan Erisher rushed in, they couldn't do anything. The only thing they could do was to wait for the two of them to walk out on their own. However, this would take some time at least. Li Zongjio's words just now almost choked Elder Baiku to death. Basically, he wouldn't be able to recover in half a day. The anger in his chest could only be forcefully suppressed in his chest. It was difficult for him to spit it out. One had to know that there were still so many students who hadn't entered yet. Where would he put his old face? Mo Suli also hadn't entered yet. At this moment, when he saw this exciting scene in front of him, he was also a little surprised. Mo Suli's impression of Li Zongjio wasn't bad. At least Li Zongjio's actions were more in line with Mo Suli's heroic image. However, Mo Suli felt that if Li Zongjio continued to cause trouble, something would happen sooner or later. In the 2 months when he didn't appear, it was peaceful. However, the moment he appeared, he actually angered Elder Baiku. This Li Zongjio's guts were really big. One had to know that Elder Baiku's battle record was quite glorious. 20 years ago, he was definitely a top expert who dominated a region. Now, he was actually mocked by Li Zongjio. When Li Zongjio was captured, Li Zongjio's ending wouldn't be so good. Sigh, this guy really isn't afraid of anything. Mo Suli had a headache. Following this, no one dared to be presumptuous. If they weren't careful, wouldn't they bump into the muzzle of Elder Baiku's gun? Then, it wouldn't be strange if he directly threw them out. Before they entered, Elder Baiku was the one who had the final say. At that time, if they say that they won't let you in, then you won't be able to go in. Li Zongjio and Kuan Erisher had just landed. This seemed to be the entrance of a dilapidated palace. The surroundings were desolate, but there was an extremely large open space. The people who had entered before were all standing there. Behind him was the boundary that he had just entered. If he was accidentally thrown out, it would be equivalent to leaving the secret realm. Seeing the arrival of Li Zongjio and Kun Erasure, Li Zongjio smiled. Qian Wuji, who was sitting on the steps in front like a moon surrounded by stars, slowly stood up as an extremely excited smile appeared on his face. The two of you are finally here. Now, kneel before me and I will consider allowing you to continue cultivating in this secret realm. Close to 20 people had already gathered around Qian Wuji. There were a total of 50 people, and almost half of them were already standing beside Qian Wuji. If these people casually launched a mental attack, it would be extremely easy to form a terrifyingly strong mental storm. In fact, there was a certain method to break through the boundary of this secret realm. With the help of others, you might be able to break through more easily. Some of the barriers that you couldn't break through, but this depended on how many people were willing to help you. If no one was willing to help you, then you would be useless. Therefore, this team was extremely important right now. Those 20 people were all veterans, and basically all of them had come to the secret realm once. Therefore, after entering, they directly chose to hug the thighs of others. Previously, when they were outside, they were still a little reserved, but after entering, they didn't hesitate at all. The deeper they went, the more profound the things they could comprehend. Therefore, for the sake of this opportunity, these people could accept a little grievance. As your senior brother, I can kindly remind you that if you are accidentally thrown out, there is no other way. If you want to enter again, you can only wait until next year. Qian Wuji threatened. He was clearly telling Li Zongjio that if Li Zongjio didn't listen to him, he would directly throw the two of them out. The space behind him fluctuated, and Mo Suli and Mu Qingyun also walked in. However, when they saw the grim situation in front of them, they knew that things weren't good. These people had obviously joined forces and were waiting to throw Li Zongjio and Kun Erasure out. Even if these people really did so, it was understandable. What could they do? Don't bother about these things. Mo Suli immediately wanted to go out and argue, but Mu Qingyun pulled him back, wanting to persuade him not to interfere in these matters. After all, both sides were walking on different paths. He helped me before, I can't just sit by and do nothing. Mo Suli shook his head, then walked up to him. Senior brother Qian. Just as Mo Suli was about to speak and discuss with Qian Wuji, he saw a figure appear beside Qian Wuji. If Mo Suli didn't see wrongly, this person was Li Zongjio. When did he appear? Why was he so fast? Even Qian Wuji was taken aback. What are you trying to do? Qian Wuji exclaimed. In the next second, Li Zongjio directly grabbed Qian Wuji's sleeve. Then, with a bang, he directly threw Qian Wuji onto the empty ground in front of him. Bang! Qian Wuji's entire body was lying on the ground, falling right in front of Mo Suli. When Mo Suli saw this scene, he was instantly stunned. What are you doing? Guisi also shouted, but in the next second, Guisi's entire body was grabbed and thrown forward. Bang! Guisi directly fell in front of Kun Erasure. Li Zongjio leaped and arrived in front of Qian Wuji. He directly stepped on Qian Wuji's face, causing blood to splatter from his nose. Move aside, the blood will splatter on your skirt, Li Zongjio said to Mo Suli. When Mo Suli heard this, he immediately grabbed his skirt and hid to the side. The remaining 20+ people all stared at the scene in front of them. They didn't expect Li Zongjio to subdue Qian Wuji in one move. It was truly unexpected. You're courting death. Qian Wuji also didn't want to admit defeat. Enduring the pain on his face, his mental energy transformed into a sharp sword and swept towards Li Zongjio. Boom! However, this mental energy sword instantly exploded on the spot. It was actually caught in Li Zongjio's hand and directly crushed on the spot. 100 Revolution Golden Rock Fire. A golden flame suddenly ignited between Qian Wuji's palms. This was because Qian Wuji also felt Li Zongjio's strength and didn't dare to be the slightest bit negligent. When the golden flame appeared, a powerful aura also spread out, as if it wanted to burn Li Zongjio into ashes. However, before Qian Wuji could release the 100 Revolution Golden Rock Fire in his hand, Li Zongjio slapped his face. Pa! The flame in his hand was also directly extinguished. This slap was crisp and clear, causing Qian Wuji to be completely stunned. Even with his mental energy, he couldn't block the power of this slap. Chapter 682. Qian Wuji fainted from the beating. In front of Li Zongjio, it could be said that he had no power to fight back. Wasn't Senior Qian Wuji the #1 expert on the alchemist list? Why was he lying on the ground like a dead dog? "What are you doing?" someone stood up and said. After all, they had just hugged Qian Wuji's thigh. Now, in the blink of an eye, they saw their thigh being stepped on. Such a scene was a little confusing for these people who had just clung onto Qian Wuji. At this time, should they rush out and avenge their thigh? At the same time, they should perform well. However, their performance must be within the scope of their ability. Otherwise, if they rushed up rashly, they would at most be sending their heads to their deaths. That would be really not worth the loss. Li Zongjio turned around and glanced at that person. That person seemed to be deterred by an invisible force and immediately scratched his head. As he looked left and right, he seemed to want to say that the person who spoke just now was not him. You are violating the rules of the academy." Guisi was also beaten up by Kuan Erasure. Kuan Erasure had long wanted to beat up this seemingly cultured scum. Now that he had this opportunity, how could he let it go? After a round of beating, Guisi's face was also beaten black and blue. "Throw him out." Li Zongjio kicked the unconscious Kuan Erasure on the ground and sent him flying. He just happened to roll under Kuan Arashi's feet. Then, Kuan Erasure directly grabbed the two people on the ground, one in each hand. "No, don't throw me out, no," Guisi exclaimed, but there was no change in his behavior. Kuan Erasure directly threw the two people out of the boundary. At this moment, outside the stone door, Qi Dan had also turned around and left after completing her mission. There were a few disciples who had arrived late and could only stand outside the stone door in frustration. They were filled with regret. Even though they knew that there was such an important matter to attend to today, they still chose to sleep for a while. Looking at the expressionless faces of the two guardian elders, they did not dare to speak at all. Who knew if they would directly beat them up? "Baiku, tell me, who do you think will be able to last the longest among the little fellows this time?" Elder Sui Rong scratched his white beard and said with a smile. Although the two of them cultivated different cultivation techniques, they had worked together for many years and traveled the world together. The relationship between them was very sincere. Seeing that Baiku had not recovered from the humiliation he had suffered, Yimo decided to find a topic to talk about. "It doesn't matter who lasts the longest. I'm waiting for that brat to be thrown out so that I can personally cripple him," Baiku said coldly. He actually dared to say that he was a gatekeeper and even told him to cut the crap. With his cultivation level, just a few words of advice from him would be enough for them to be grateful to him. He actually dared to boast so shamelessly. Let's see how many people in the Jianghu will jump out to take care of him in the future. After angrily speaking, Elder Baiku's thoughts changed. Why should he make things difficult for a brat with such a loose tongue? Wouldn't that be lowering his own status? Wouldn't that destroy the state of mind that he had cultivated for so many years? After calming down, Elder Baiku's eyes flickered. If we're talking about who can last the longest, it would be this brat, Qian Wuji. Previously, that brat had already charged into the sacred hall, but unfortunately, she didn't have enough luck. I wonder if this brat can make it into the sacred hall this time. Elder Baiku nodded and said, "The mysteries of the sacred hall are things that even you and I couldn't pry into in the past. Who knows how many reincarnations it will take for someone to discover it?" Elder Sui Rong sighed and said, "These people were also very curious about some of the secrets of this secret realm. However, after going there once, they deeply understood that the secrets inside were not something that they could pry into. Their current cultivation level was far from being enough." Just as the two of them were chatting, a few light runes suddenly flashed on the stone door behind them. Seeing this scene, the two of them immediately revealed a shocked expression. "Huh?" Elder Baiku's face was also filled with a trace of astonishment. Could it be that someone is being thrown out now? I'd like to see which unlucky brat it is. Just as Elder Baiku's voice faded, bang! Two figures flew out in an instant and smashed onto the floor. Both of their faces were colorful, and most of their eyes, noses, and the like were already in a distorted state. Anyone who saw them couldn't help but be shocked. Oh my God! Isn't this? When they were barely able to distinguish the two people lying on the ground, the two of them were shocked. Wasn't the one who was thrown out, Qian Wuji, whom Elder Baiku thought highly of? The other one was also Guisi, who was pretty good. However, Guisi's luck was obviously not as good as Qian Wuji's. However, at the moment, the two of them were fated to meet the same fate. They were both thrown out. Who on earth had such great ability to throw these two people out? One was ranked first on the Alchemy Master ranking, while the other was ranked third in the Alchemy Master ranking. However, the two of them were now lying on the ground like dead dogs. Moreover, their faces were beaten to such a state that it was difficult to recognize them. Elder, you have to seek justice for us. Even though Guisi was a man, when he saw this, his heart could no longer hold it in. He burst into tears. Since he was young, when had he ever suffered such grievances? This caused Guisi to feel grief and indignation. Who had the guts to throw you out? Even Elder Sui Rong couldn't stand it anymore. It was one thing to throw them out, but to beat them to such a state was too arrogant and too much. It's Li Zongjio and Kuan Erasure. These two bastards. Elder, quickly go in and kill the two of them, Guisi said with extreme grievance. Qian Wuji still hadn't woken up. It was obvious that Li Zongjio had hit him a little too hard. As a result, Qian Wuji still hadn't woken up. Shut up. Fighting and killing, where is your decency? Elder Sui Rong's face turned solemn. It was fine if it was just a fight, but if it escalated to the level of revenge, then it had to be treated strictly. No one would tolerate it. Every disciple of the Heavenly Star Medicine Manor was nurtured with great care. How could they lose their lives because of a personal grudge? It was too absurd. Therefore, killing each other was absolutely forbidden in the academy. Chapter 683. Guisi finally came to his senses after being yelled at. However, the mystic realm that he had been waiting for a year for had been thrown out by Li Zongjio before it even started. How could Guisi still have the face to stay there? He immediately cupped his hands at the two elders before turning around and leaving quickly. He had to leave this heartbreaking and despairing place. This Li Zongjio is quite arrogant. Even Elder Sui Rong couldn't tell what was going on with Li Zongjio. To be able to do such a thing and throw out two experts on the Alchemy Master role, his strength couldn't be underestimated. Therefore, Elder Sui Rong was also wondering how far Li Zongjio could go in the mystic realm. In the mystic realm, when the remaining people saw Kuan Erasure throw out the two of them, they didn't dare say anything. They just stared at Li Zongjio and Kuan Erasure. Is there anyone else who wants to spar with me or make a bet with me? Li Zongjio clapped his hands. He vaguely remembered that when they were outside, Qian Wuji seemed to have made a bet with Li Zongjio, saying that they wanted to see who could last the longest in this secret realm. In the blink of an eye, he had been thrown out. According to the previous bet, Qian Wuji had to be Li Zongjio's medicine boy for a year and eat Li Zongjio's shit for a year. The scene in front of them was indeed unexpected. Fortunately, they hadn't made the bet before. Otherwise, Qian Wuji would be too ashamed to show his face after leaving this place. The remaining people looked at Li Zongjio and Kuan Erasure and subconsciously opened up a path for them. It's not time for the restriction to be activated yet, so there's no way to break through the boundary in front of us. Kuan Erasure said as he looked at the scene in front of him. It's not that we can't force our way in. It's just that the difficulty will be 10 times greater than the opening day. Mo Su Li said. Li Zongjio's style of doing things was really surprising. However, after getting familiar with it, they felt that Li Zongjio was truly afraid that it would be too late for revenge. Normally, if there was a grudge between them, they would take revenge on the spot. Is that so? After Li Zongjio heard this, he also walked up the stairs. At the end of the stairs, there was an invisible wall. When Li Zongjio reached out his hand, he found that it was blocked by a force. No matter how much strength you used, the invisible wall would return the same amount of strength. There's no need to forcefully try. This level of power is not something that we can break through. Mo Su Li couldn't help but say. If Li Zongjio forcefully tried, he might be seriously injured by the power of the boundary. That was why he said that. Li Zongjio took half a step back when he heard this. Mo Su Li and the others thought that Li Zongjio was about to give up. Then, they saw Li Zongjio raise the fist in his hand and abruptly smash it towards the invisible wall. Boom! A fist smashed out. Suddenly, an invisible vibration rang out, and the terrifying fluctuation immediately spread out in all directions. When the surrounding people felt the vibration, they couldn't help but simultaneously retreat. They even hurriedly covered their ears with their hands, forcibly suppressing the power. Li Zongjio naturally felt the appearance of this power. The enormous rebound force immediately swept towards Li Zongjio's body. Whoosh! Li Zongjio also forcibly suppressed the power in his body. Only then did he not fly out. If that happened, it would be a great loss of face. It was no wonder that Mo Su Li would say such words. However, his words just now could only be considered as Li Zongjio not being ready yet. This thing is pretty hard. However, I like to beat hard things into soft things the most. Immediately, Li Zongjio took another step back. After taking this step, Li Zongjio's fist directly emitted a golden light. This golden light appeared in an extremely low-key manner. Then, Li Zongjio suddenly smashed his fist out. The terrifying golden power also accompanied Li Zongjio's fist as it smashed towards the invisible wall. Boom! At this moment, the incomparably tough energy wall was also broken. Then, Li Zongjio's body was directly sucked in. He entered the next level. The rest of the people did not have time to rush in. They saw Li Zongjio disappear before their eyes. When they saw this scene, everyone was stunned. That was something that was impossible to happen, yet it had happened right before his eyes time and time again. Such a living example, witnessing such a shocking scene, made their jaws drop. Suddenly, Mo Su Li, who was behind him, was also extremely shocked. He saw Li Zongjio directly enter the next level. In his heart, he also understood that Li Zongjio's power had far exceeded theirs. Furthermore, this mystic realm seemed to be a place for people to venture into. If one could directly enter the second level, it would be equivalent to staying in the second level for 6 whole days. They would not have to waste time in the first level. Is it that awesome? Let me give it a try. After seeing this scene, Kun Erasure calculated in his heart. He naturally understood that as long as the power reached a certain level, he would be able to bring himself in. It could be considered as breaking through the next level and reaching the next level in advance. If there were any treasures in the next level, it might be taken away by others in advance. When he thought of this, Kun Erasure naturally began to try without stopping. However, when Kun Erasure threw out his first punch, he did not feel the power of the barrier. He was immediately sent flying by the power of the barrier. Bang! Kun Arashi's entire body was sent flying for nearly 20 meters. He was almost blasted out of the first area's barrier. Damn, it's so fierce. Kun Erasure ate a mouthful of mud. When he got up again, there was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. However, Kun Erasure did not give up. Kun Wing Spear. The long spear in his hand. At the same time, a terrifying flame was released from his body. The fire of the setting sun. The Kun Wing Spear in his hand followed the power of the fire of the setting sun and immediately rushed towards the barrier in front of him. Boom! The terrifying power overlapped and instantly blasted a hole in the barrier in front of him. At the same time, Kun Erasure was also sucked in by the spear. Many people heaved a sigh of relief when they saw Lan Kun and Li Zongjio, these two perverts, disappear before their eyes. At the very least, they wouldn't have to worry about being thrown out by others if they were still here. However, at the same time, they were also surprised. With the strength of the two, they were able to force their way through the barrier. This meant that their strength was very terrifying. At the same time, it also let them know that the game of this secret realm was not meant for them to wait here. Instead, it was meant for them to continuously rush through. After finding the correct way to open the barrier, the disciples of Heavenly Day Medicine Manor also began to move. Boom! Boom! Many people used too much strength and did not have enough strength, so they were directly sent flying. Those who fell in the secret realm were considered lucky. A few who were unlucky were directly sent flying out of the secret realm. Just like that, this trip to the secret realm ended hastily. When they got up, they did not even know what was going on. Elder Sui Rong and the others thought that Li Zongjio had thrown them out again. That was too arrogant. The people at the back had already learned their lesson. Everyone helped each other and made sure that they didn't fly out. Some also worked together to attack. In the process of repeated attempts, some people successfully broke through. Just like Li Zongjio and the others, they entered the second zone. Immediately, the remaining people became excited as if they had been injected with chicken blood. They did not stop attacking. They wanted to force their way through. Li Zongjio's fist was shining with golden light. At this moment, the golden dragon original spirit also exploded with unprecedented power. It carried Li Zongjio all the way out. Li Zongjio didn't bother to calculate which level he had arrived at. However, along the way, it seemed as though every level of the area was also a scene of this sect. This is a dojo? Chapter 684. The surrounding area was filled with ferocious-looking statues. In the middle was a wide platform. It was the martial arts practice platform. Usually, if there were any fellow disciples who wanted to spar with each other, they would spar here and communicate with each other. Hence, there were many marks left on the floor. Li Zongjio walked through the few areas in front of him. He did not feel any strange changes in the surroundings, even though the density of the Yuan power had increased. However, for the great sects of the ancient times, the Yuan power was the most ordinary existence. Now, the secret realm of the Heavenly Dawn Medicine Manor was no longer mysterious. It was the entrance to the remains of an ancient sect. It was hard to say whether the entire ancient sect had been fully explored by others. Based on Li Zongjio's current situation, the secret realm was meant for these disciples to explore this ancient sect. Li Zongjio had seen many remains of ancient sects in his previous life. The most recent one was the Compassionate Travel sect. It was quite famous in the ancient times, but it gradually declined after surviving until now, which made people sigh. Although the current Compassionate Travel sect's strength was not good, to a certain extent, its potential was very terrifying. If there was an opportunity in the future, the Compassionate Travel sect would definitely be able to grow to a terrifying extent. A sect like this should not be underestimated. It was just waiting for the time when it would explode in the future. Because this area was different, the auras left behind were also different. In the beginning, one could only feel a little bit of aura at most. However, it was different in this training ground. The aura around them was fierce and fierce. If one thought that a martial arts maniac was here, they would definitely go crazy. However, for Li Zongjio, these auras were nothing to him. He was not interested at all. So what if it was an ancient sect? In his previous life, Li Zongjio was a supreme being expert. If he was in this ancient sect, he would be more than qualified to be a sect master. The combat experience of these disciples was completely useless to Li Zongjio. The main hall should be up ahead. Li Zongjio looked at the magnificent building in front of him. There were bronze beasts guarding the entrance on both sides, eyeing it covetously. He didn't come here to find some martial arts experience, but to find the pilgrimage path. If he didn't have the pilgrimage path, even if he walked in, it would be useless. This should be where Do Ling was talking about the statues. Clearly, Do Ling had also come to this place in one go. Then, if you feel bored here, why don't you move on? In fact, just the amount of energy consumed to reach this place was already extremely terrifying. Back then, Do Ling was able to force her way to this place. It was likely that she had exhausted all her strength. If she wanted to continue, she would need to use even more strength. In front of the main entrance of the main hall, Li Zongjio stood there quietly. He stretched out his hand to touch the wooden door in front of him and immediately felt a strong sense of rejection. At the same time, there was also a hint of warning. It seemed to be warning Li Zongjio that if he didn't belong to the sect, if he rashly entered, he would definitely be killed. After several attempts, Li Zongjio also clearly felt that the strength of the boundary here was much stronger than other places. Do you think this can stop me? Li Zongjio smiled disdainfully. Li Zongjio had walked through countless difficult roads since the beginning. What kind of obstacles could he not overcome? Just as well, let me try the hell skill that I just opened. 10 directions hell, blood soul hell. Li Zongjio's whole body was covered in a layer of red light. His eyes also turned crimson red. Now that there was no one around, Li Zongjio no longer hid his strength. He released the dragon soul power, and in this space, an extremely terrifying aura reverberated. The majesty of the dragon clan descended. Although Li Zongjio's current strength was enough to protect himself and even stand in an invincible position in front of an epic emperor powerhouse, it wasn't impossible for him to kill an epic emperor powerhouse if he went all out. However, if people knew that Li Zongjio had the dragon clan original spirit in his body, it would cause unnecessary trouble. It would definitely cause unnecessary trouble. At that time, it might even alarm a sovereign expert. Unless Li Zongjio could be reborn again, he would definitely die in front of a sovereign expert. However, Li Zongjio did not have to worry too much about this, because even a sovereign expert would not be so idle. Furthermore, it was already very difficult to find anything that could move such an expert. Unless one was extremely unlucky, such as Li Zongjio accidentally bumping into a supreme being who was currently roaming the world. If that happened, everything would be over. Every supreme being wanted to search for a path of pilgrimage. Even if they had just broken through to the supreme being realm, they would still want to break through one day. However, this was obviously not a simple matter. Therefore, when the slightest possibility appeared in this world, it would attract the attention of a sovereign expert. Don't be fooled by the fact that these guys were usually aloof. However, if something related to them or even something they cared about appeared, they would definitely become 100 times more terrifying and vicious than the wolves in the world. It was better to be careful. When the terrifying aura spread out, the space around Li Zongjio was also constantly changing. It seemed like there was a black blood aura that was constantly lingering. After lingering once, the surrounding space completely changed. A bronze door appeared in front of Li Zongjio. It was the entrance to another boundary. Golden Dragon Original Spirit. White Dragon Original Spirit. The two original spirits were once again attached to his body. In the preparation of this punch, not only did it contain the powerful physical strength, but it also contained Li Zongjio's extremely terrifying mental strength. Boom! Li Zongjio punched out. First of all, within his blood soul hell, it was already covered with a layer of extremely powerful force. Then it directly rushed out. It seemed like there were two dragon souls, entwined with each other, and madly rushed out. It fiercely hit the bronze door in front of him. All of a sudden, the rebounding force was reflected back at the same time, covering Li Zongjio's body. Li Zongjio had long been prepared. The blood soul hell covered his whole body, guiding this force into the blood soul hell. Immediately, he was in the middle of hell, surrounded by the dark and cold force. However, Li Zongjio also clearly felt the collision between the two forces. It seemed like it wanted to destroy Li Zongjio. Fortunately, the blood soul hell was still strong. He managed to block the terrifying energy. Buzz. Li Zongjio felt his body become light, and then he was sucked in. Chapter 685. Li Zongjio entered the room with a sudden realization. Suddenly, a terrifying aura came from all directions and landed on Li Zongjio's body. Boom! It was as if there were boulders pressing down on Li Zongjio's body from all directions. It was clear that there was such a strange pressure in this place. It wanted to make Li Zongjio kneel in the hall. The sudden force did not make Li Zongjio panic. The golden dragon soul appeared behind Li Zongjio as it unleashed a domineering aura to help Li Zongjio withstand the pressure from the surroundings. It was only now that Li Zongjio felt the pressure lessen. Oh, this. Li Zongjio's eyes lit up when he saw an item displayed on the table in front of him. Could this be the desolate heaven essence? What appeared in front of Li Zongjio was a weapon similar to the Kong Long Jian. However, this desolate heaven essence was completely white and there was an extremely tyrannical wild aura on it. It looked like there was a white wild aura circulating around it. This situation also caused Li Zongjio to be shocked. The weapon in front of him seemed familiar. In the future, it had also been obtained by an arrogant young man. Even though that young man was only at the Yuan monarch level, he had been able to whip Yuan monarchs wantonly with the desolate heaven essence in his hand. That was very powerful. It also made people drool over this weapon. Later on, a group of experts came out from the depths of the vast wilderness and took away the desolate heaven essence, saying that it was a sacred item left behind by their ancestors and belonged to them. And that young man's whereabouts were unknown since then. When that young man appeared, Li Zongjio had only seen the desolate heaven essence in some scrolls. At that time, Li Zongjio had just stepped into the Yuan Emperor level and did not care about these things. If this thing was so easy to obtain, it would not have been his turn at that time. Li Zongjio knew his own limits. Now, he could actually see the desolate heaven essence with his own eyes. It also surprised Li Zongjio. It was said that the desolate heaven essence was refined from the ridge of a sacred mountain in the depths of the vast wilderness. And in the vast wilderness, it was refined using the wild aura for countless days before finally refining the desolate heaven essence. When it was casually used, it had the power to pierce through 10,000 mountains. I never expected the desolate heaven essence to be in the heavenly star medicine manner. If this is the case, then this sect remains should be related to the great desolate lands. Li Zongjio thought to himself, but at the same time, he admired the Xingyan dynasty's methods. They had built an institute on top of the ruins. Such a method made it impossible for outsiders to say anything. Whether it was the Genius Pavilion or the Secret Realm, they were all products of this ancient sect. However, it was very natural for the heavenly star medicine manner to use them. Even if it was traced back to the past, it was still unclear how it came to be. Furthermore, at the time when the Xingyan dynasty was at its strongest, who would dare to take the initiative to find trouble? Even if they knew, they could only pretend not to know, and at the same time, applaud the Xingyan dynasty. Speaking of the desolate heaven essence, it was definitely an extremely sharp weapon in the early stages. Li Zongjio was tempted. In his previous life, the Yuan monarch was able to defeat an primitive emperor with the desolate heaven essence. If it was in his hands now, he would definitely be able to unleash an even more terrifying power. In addition, the desolate heaven essence itself was a weapon that contained the wild aura, so it might have many other unexpected uses. After obtaining this weapon, the powerhouses of the vast wilderness would come out to cause trouble. It wouldn't be easy for them to take it away from Li Zongjio's hands. No matter what, he had to take it first. It wasn't easy to obtain the desolate heaven essence. The pressure he felt just now was released by the desolate heaven essence. It was also because there was a desolate heaven essence in the room that outsiders couldn't open it. Without sufficient strength, it would be difficult to succeed. Li Zongjio's punch just now was equivalent to exceeding the realm of an primitive emperor. Therefore, the power of that punch was something that few people could achieve, even in the heavenly star medicine manner. Li Zongjio took a step closer to the desolate heaven essence and immediately felt the pressure on his body rise. Boom! The ground beneath his feet was fine, but Li Zongjio could already feel that his body was enduring a rather terrifying force. Interesting. Li Zongjio's lips curled up. This kind of extremely challenging thing was his favorite. Many times he had climbed up from the abyss of death. This was enough to prove Li Zongjio's strength and his incomparably tenacious willpower. White Dragon Origin Spirit. Rise. Behind him, another ray of white light appeared. The two dragon souls appeared, and the pressure on his body suddenly weakened. When the power of the two dragon souls filled the entire room, it felt like it was about to collapse. In terms of pressure, they were already equal. However, Li Zongjio liked to use a domineering stance. Blood Dragon Soul. Boom. When the power of the Blood Dragon Soul spread out, it was as if the world was falling apart. The desolate heaven essence's aura finally retracted. It had been sleeping here for many years and had never met an opponent. Even if someone came here, they would be easily intimidated by it. Where did such a powerful aura come from? It was naturally shocked when it suddenly appeared in front of it. You're scared? I haven't even used my fourth origin spirit yet. Just the appearance of the 3 dragon souls was enough to make the desolate heaven essence in front of them look down on the world. Following that, it stunned the desolate heaven essence before them. Li Zongjio easily took 2 steps forward and grabbed the desolate heaven essence in his hand. At first, the desolate heaven essence put up some resistance, but in the next second, it admitted defeat and was easily picked up by Li Zongjio. Boom! A mountain-collapsing aura spread out in all directions. The desolate heaven essence had been sleeping here for many years. Now that it was finally picked up by someone, even the desolate heaven essence itself felt as if it had seen the light of day again. Not bad. Li Zongjio weighed it in his hand. When he casually waved it, it felt as if the space around it would explode. Wouldn't this move be able to obliterate even a Yuan monarch expert? This weapon is enough for me to refine. Chapter 686. Refining a weapon did not mean that the weapon would be directly melted. Instead, it was a method unique to Yuan masters. They used their own Yuan power to completely refine the weapon until it could be kept within their body. However, this was a process that required a long period of communication and nurturing. Keeping it within one's body would make it an extremely convenient weapon for oneself. It could also be considered a magical use of Yuan power. After such refinement, one would definitely be able to connect with the weapon through one's heart. Just like Li Zongjio's vast flying dagger. Being able to connect with each other's hearts would allow one to display even greater power under such circumstances. Li Zongjio did not choose to continue. It was already very difficult for him to reach this point with his current strength. If he continued, he might lose more than he gained. Greed was human nature, but there were not many people who could restrain their greed within the limits of one's own strength. If one could not control their desires, it would be very difficult for them to achieve anything. Li Zongjio began refining the desolate heaven essence in this room. As for the people outside, after the exciting journey at the beginning, each of them had displayed their strength. At the same time, the gap between them had widened. Some people were able to enter the next level with all their might, but there were others who were unable to successfully break through even if they used all their strength. This was rather surprising. As for Li Zongjio, he stayed in the room and refined the desolate heaven essence in peace. When Li Zongjio used his mental strength to enter the desolate heaven essence, he was immediately shocked by the terrifying aura that was emitted from the desolate heaven essence. This weapon must have been a weapon that deterred the heavens and earth in ancient times. Li Zongjio was no longer able to sense the age of the desolate heaven essence. However, the aura left behind on it was extremely ancient. After a series of battles, it had now appeared in Li Zongjio's hands. Such an ancient divine weapon would definitely not be a disgrace in the hands of Li Zongjio. During the refining process, Li Zongjio could clearly feel his blood-soul hell growing slightly as he refined it. It's the killing aura on the desolate heaven essence. Li Zongjio opened his eyes. In order to increase the strength of the blood-soul hell, he had to absorb enough killing aura. For example, the killing aura left behind on the desolate heaven essence allowed the blood-soul hell to expand by nearly 1/10. Now, everything within 100 feet of Li Zongjio was hell. It looks like I won't be able to stop in this life. Li Zongjio could not help but say. Killing people was like eating a meal in front of Li Zongjio. There was nothing wrong with it, nor was there any resistance. This was because, to be honest, there were too many people in this world who deserved to die. Some people said that it was not up to you to judge whether others deserved to die or not. That was where they were wrong. In Li Zongjio's place, it did not matter if I disliked you and criticized you. As long as I was stronger than you, you would die if I wanted you dead. Desolate heaven essence. Li Zongjio opened his palm and the desolate heaven essence immediately appeared in his hand. A dense aura lingered around it. Finally, there was a passable weapon. As for the Thunder Slayer saber and Thunder Shen hammer, they were only convenient in the hands of Li Zongjio when he was slashing people. He did not intend to use them for anything else. It was extremely difficult to injure an primitive emperor with such a weapon. Even if Li Zongjio were to use them personally, the effect might not be good. With the Yuan Qi body of an primitive emperor, It was enough to block these forces outside their body easily. Unless it was some special yuan weapon, it would not be able to injure them. This was also the reason why Li Zongjio had always avoided a direct confrontation with an primitive emperor. Even if an primitive emperor stood still and let a yuan monarch expert slash at him with a saber in his hand, he would not be able to do much. However, an primitive emperor only needed to slightly vibrate his aura and he would be shattered along with his saber. Only by wielding such a divine weapon would one be able to fight head-on with an primitive emperor. As long as he took advantage of the moment when the latter was unprepared, he could escape and smash the primitive emperor powerhouse with his rod, turning him into a retard. Oh, you're here already? Li Zongjio felt the fluctuations in the surroundings. Then, a gentle force sent Li Zongjio out. Before Li Zongjio came, the longest time he had stayed in the secret realm was 21 days. However, Li Zongjio had stayed in there for a whole month. Just like that, 30 days passed by in a flash. When Li Zongjio opened his eyes again, he found himself in front of the stone door that he had first entered. Other than the two elders, there was only Lan Kuan at the side. He held a green foxtail in his mouth and squatted at the side, waiting. Kuan Arashir had stayed in there for a total of 18 days, which was considered a long time this time. However, he had only lingered outside the mountain gate and did not get too close. If he wanted to enter the sect, he would have to be at least at the peak of the Yuan monarch realm. Therefore, Kuan Arashir did not have much strength left. Previously, everyone had been sent out according to the order of their strength. However, Kuan Arashir did not see Li Zongjio. Those who did not know would have thought that Li Zongjio had died in there. However, Kuan Arashir knew that Li Zongjio was so strong that he would not die so easily. Therefore, he waited at the side. Unexpectedly, this wait lasted for almost half a month. All the students in the Heavenly Star Medicine Manor were on vacation. Therefore, Kuan Arashir was worried about what Li Zongjio was doing. "Boss, you're finally out." When he saw Li Zongjio appear, Kuan Arashir hurriedly got up and threw the green foxtail in his mouth to the side. When he looked at Li Zongjio, the aura on his body seemed to have improved once again. It was obvious that he had become stronger. When Elder Baiku and Elder Sui Rong saw that Li Zongjio had actually stayed in there for a total of 30 days, they felt deep disbelief. "Kid, what did you encounter in there?" Elder Baiku immediately shouted in a deep voice. At the same time, his figure flashed and appeared not far away from Li Zongjio. Elder Baiku wanted to get closer to Li Zongjio. However, he felt an inexplicable sense of danger when he approached Li Zongjio. It was as if the unseen world was warning him that something bad would happen if he exceeded this distance. Chapter 687. If you want to know, why don't you go in and take a look yourself? Li Zongjio glanced at Elder Baiku. As an elder, Elder Baiku did not have the slightest bit of magnanimity. Now that Elder Baiku wanted to make things difficult for Li Zongjio, how could he be courteous? "Kid, do you think that you can match up to a true elite just because you have some tricks up your sleeves?" Elder Baiku's eyes narrowed. His originally small eyeballs were like cracks at this moment. A sinister gaze leaked out from within the cracks. He stared intently at Li Zongjio, who was standing before him. When Lan Kuan saw this, he also knew that the situation was not good. From the looks of the two of them, it was obvious that they were about to fight. Kuan Arashir might not be able to say much about other people, but this was a guardian elder that even Vice Dean Chidan respected. Generally speaking, the strength of a guardian elder was on the stronger side. Perhaps they could even kill Li Zongjio in an instant. "You're old. Let's just sit down and talk. I'm afraid that your back will hurt if you stand up and talk for too long," Li Zongjio said nonchalantly. The sinister smile on Elder Baiku's face became even more vibrant. Upon seeing Li Zongjio, he smiled menacingly. "Very well. Previously, you made a move in the mystic area and broke the sect's rules. Today, I will fulfill my duty as an elder and teach you how to be a proper disciple." Elder Baiku suddenly extended a palm towards Li Zongjio. His palm was extremely skinny, as if a piece of withered tree bark was wrapped around his finger. It looked extremely terrifying. As the palm extended towards Li Zongjio, Kun Erishur, who was not the target, also felt a powerful aura and could not help but retreat continuously. This person's strength had actually reached the half-step Yuan sovereign realm. Although he had yet to reach the Yuan sovereign realm, his aura was not something that a peak Yuan monarch could compare to. Kun Erishur had seen this peak Yuan king expert in action before. Now that he was facing Elder Baiku, he felt an unprecedented pressure. No matter how outstanding Kun Arashi's talent was, he had yet to break through to the Yuan monarch realm. The gap between them was too great, forcing Kun Erishur to retreat. Good timing. You can also try out my weapon. Li Zongjio saw Elder Baiku rushing over. It had to be said that Baiku's strength was not bad. At the very least, it would not be a problem for him to protect the Heavenly Dawn Medicine Manor. It was no wonder that Vice Principal Chi Dan would be so respectful to these people. In any case, they could be considered as half of the school's guardian gods. To be able to invite these great gods to oversee the school, it seemed that the Heavenly Dawn Medicine Manor's Manor Lord was not a simple person. Furthermore, the Manor Lord was not even in the manor. Something appeared in Li Zongjio's hand. He directly smashed the stick towards Elder Baiku's outstretched palm. Elder Baiku already had a bad premonition when Li Zongjio took out this weapon. When the stick came smashing towards him, Elder Baiku raised his hand confidently to block it. Now that he had his own Yuan Qi, it was impossible for ordinary weapons to hurt him. Boom! Elder Baiku's arm was bleeding from Li Zongjio's stick. Bang! Elder Baiku's arm was swollen. Immediately, Elder Baiku clenched his hand and grimaced in pain. You can actually break through my defense. Elder Baiku was shocked. He couldn't believe it. Although Elder Baiku was only a half-step Yuan Sovereign Realm expert, this was only half a step forward. Elder Baiku's strength had already far surpassed that of Lei Gong, the owner of the Bright Lightning Craftsman Workshop. However, when Elder Baiku faced Li Zongjio, his defense was easily broken through by Li Zongjio. As an Yuan Sovereign Realm expert's defense, Elder Baiku could not believe it. This was because he believed that Li Zongjio would not be able to break through his defense. However, Li Zongjio had completely disappointed Elder Baiku. Not only could he break through his defense, but he could also beat the shit out of him. Immediately, the desolate heaven essence in his hand smashed towards Elder Baiku's leg. Boom! This whip had awakened Elder Baiku from his stupor. The weapon in Li Zongjio's hand was not only able to break through his defense, it could also easily cripple him. Smith. Another crisp sound was heard as Li Zongjio knocked Elder Baiku to the ground. Ah! Elder Baiku roared loudly. At the same time, he unleashed all the Yuan power in his body and retreated backwards. He had never imagined that he would suffer such a great loss at the hands of Li Zongjio. Elder Baiku gritted his teeth as he stared at Li Zongjio. Brat, what weapon is that in your hand? Elder Baiku was in pain, but he did not believe that this was Li Zongjio's strength. There must be something strange about it. The only strange thing in Li Zongjio's hand was the desolate heaven essence. What weapon? Haven't you had enough? Do you want a few more? Li Zongjio gently waved the desolate heaven essence in his hand. Immediately, several phantoms appeared. The terrifying vibrations immediately made Elder Baiku nervous. As if he saw the fear in Elder Baiku's eyes, Li Zongjio said with disdain, "Wait till you break through to the primitive emperor realm before you come and take revenge on me. Gatekeeper, just guard the door properly. Don't look down on people with your dog eyes." After saying that, Li Zongjio elegantly turned around and left. With just a few words, Elder Baiku was left speechless. Since when did this brat become so arrogant? He actually dared to point his spear at Elder Baiku and even taught him a lesson. It was unbelievable. Elder Sui Rong, who was standing by the side, fell into deep thought when he saw this scene. Although Elder Baiku was beaten up, at least his life was saved. Furthermore, no one saw it. As long as he didn't say anything, no one would know that he was beaten up. The Yuan artifact in that brat's hand isn't simple. Sui Rong said. Elder Baiku was naturally furious when he heard that. Of course it's not simple. How can it be simple to break through my Yuan Emperor body? Elder Baiku said angrily. It was clearly not a joke. Could it be that this brat had a very powerful background? He actually had such a powerful weapon. Just the thought of it was terrifying. At the same time, Elder Baiku was thinking that if this weapon landed in his hands, it might be even more effective. You don't have to think about it. In my opinion, if that brat wanted to kill you, you wouldn't have any hope of surviving. Sui Rong shook his head. Naturally, he could see through Elder Baiku's thoughts. Although he was already here and seemed to be undergoing such a cultivation, it wasn't very effective. Once he saw such a good item, he couldn't help but feel an itch in his heart. After hearing Sui Rong's words, Elder Baiku understood that with the desolate heaven essence in his hands, Li Zongjio could really kill him easily. However, he naturally couldn't let go of his mouth so easily. Tisuke, come if you have the ability. Chapter 688. Boss, where did you get that weapon from? It's too fierce. Kuin Erasure could naturally tell that Li Zongjio's weapon was extraordinary. The 2 or 3 moves he had just displayed were extremely terrifying. A half-step primitive emperor expert. Kuin Erasure could not even think of resisting such an expert. He could only think of resisting this aura. He thought that Li Zongjio would suffer a little, but who would have thought that Li Zongjio would casually take out such a big stick and easily beat this person to the point where he fled in panic? That was also because he reckoned that the other party had run fast. If he had run a little slower, he might have died under Li Zongjio's cudgel. Lan Kuin was even more astonished to see a weapon that could beat an primitive emperor powerhouse. As a citizen of Kuin City, he had also undergone systematic learning. At the very least, Kuin City had once produced a primitive emperor expert. Hence, he was aware of some of the knowledge regarding primitive emperors. He wasn't completely clueless about them. It was difficult for ordinary weapons to injure primitive emperors. When one's cultivation level broke through to the primitive emperor realm, one's body would form a kind of primitive emperor energy. This was because the energy in one's body was too strong, and it could no longer be contained. Therefore, when it was released outside the body, it would naturally form a wall of air around the body. It was not difficult to see the difference in strength between primitive emperors based on this wall of air. The stronger the primitive emperor expert's cultivation level, the stronger the aura would be. When one reached the sovereign realm, it would form the power of one's own domain. Some people were talented and intelligent and had already comprehended this level in the primitive emperor realm. However, they could only imitate 30% of it. It was obvious that Elder Baiku had already condensed his own aura. It was basically impossible to shatter it. However, Li Zongjio had done it easily and had even almost broken Elder Baiku's leg. This is nothing. When you break through to the primitive emperor realm, I will give you something even more impressive. Li Zongjio said calmly. However, this sentence was slightly boastful. Although Li Zongjio was a multifaceted genius, he was still a genius. However, in terms of refining weapons, he might not have such ability. After all, Li Zongjio was an expert in alchemy. Furthermore, the desolate heaven essence itself was extremely powerful. Forging a weapon that surpassed the desolate heaven essence was not an easy task. Really? Then I'll remember it, hee. Kuin Erasure immediately laughed. I asked you to go to Shui Yu's house to take a look. Did you go? Li Zongjio asked. Perhaps it was because in her previous life, she ended up being alone for the rest of her life. Therefore, in this life, she had become a little wishy-washy. She also had a kind of eager attitude towards the couples around her. He even paid a lot of attention to it. Obviously, this was a typical attitude of an old person. Her own matters were not settled yet, but she was always worrying about other people's matters. That's right. I have not been to Shui Yu's house. Basically, I have been contacting her through letters. Previously, I had been writing in, but recently, there have been no replies. I was preparing to go and see what happened after you came out. Kuin Erasure said as he thought about it. Then what are you waiting for? As Li Zongjio spoke, the two of them walked out of the entrance of the Heavenly Stellar Medicine Mansion. It was now the holiday season and the students did not need to continue their studies in the Heavenly Stellar Medicine Mansion. Instead, they had sufficient time to return home and visit relatives. Alternatively, They could work as a temporary alchemist in a pill workshop in the Holy Flame Royal City and help others refine some pills to earn some extra money. At the same time, it was also to build up their reputation. Some of them chose to travel around during this period. It was also a very lively and carefree thing to do. However, the entrance of the Heavenly Star Medicine Manor was a little deserted. When the two of them reached the entrance, someone was pacing back and forth. Then, he realized that there were people pacing back and forth in front of the Heavenly Dawn Medicine Manor. It was obvious that they were extremely anxious. Miss Wan, seeing the person, Kuan Arashur was a little surprised. This Miss Wan was Shui Yu's servant girl. Kuan Arashur was not stupid. He roughly knew that Shui Yu's status was either rich or noble. It was normal for her to have a servant girl by her side. Young Master Lan, come with me quickly. Something bad has happened. When Wan saw Kuan Arashur, it was as if she had seen her savior. She hurriedly went up to Kuan Arashur and pulled him away. Kuan Arashur naturally pulled Li Zongjio along. As they ran, he introduced them to Li Zongjio. Boss, this is Wan, Shui Yu's servant girl. Wan, this is my boss, Li Zongjio. Wan waved her hand when she heard that. What time is it? Why are you still calling me boss and second boss? He directly pushed the two of them into the carriage. Then Wan also squeezed in. Let's go to the Mirror Moon Villa. With a roar, the carriage quickly rose into the air. It was only now that Wan finally stopped. She had only run for a short distance, but she was already panting. What exactly happened? Why are you so flustered? Li Zongjio frowned and asked. Just now, this girl called Wan dared to be disrespectful to him. However, this was not a big problem, so he simply let her go. It seemed that the situation was a little dangerous. It's Mississippi. Mrs. Mother is recuperating in the Mirror Moon Villa. Originally, under the care of Master Mirror Moon, everything seemed to be stable. However, in the past few days, her illness suddenly flared up. Master Mirror Moon once said that only the elixirs of some sect could alleviate her illness. Now, this sect's young master actually brought the elixirs and came to propose marriage. Wan said nervously. But in any case, she still clearly explained the cause and effect of this matter. Li Zongjio and Kuan Arashur also heard it clearly. The general meaning was that Shui Yue was going to get married? How could this be? Who is so arrogant to dare to steal my woman? Kuan Arashur was unable to restrain his anger. He could not wait to grab that person in front of him and give him a good beating. I remember now. It's the Mystic Yuan sect. It's the young master of the Mystic Yuan sect. I heard that the Mystic Yuan sect is very powerful. The Mystic Yuan sect. When Kuan Arashur heard this name, he was slightly shocked. Li Zongjio also looked at Kuan Arashi's expression. The Mystic Yuan sect's strength was a well-known first-rate sect in the Xingyan dynasty. It was different from the Spirit Valley sect and the Valley Immortal sect. The Mystic Yuan sect specialized in cultivating elemental force cultivation experts. It was similar to the Foggy Snow Pill sect near the Luoxia city that Li Zongjio came from. However, the Foggy Snow Pill sect was only equivalent to a third-rate sect. But the Mystic Yuan sect was equivalent to a first-rate sect. Usually, a first-rate sect's sphere of influence could affect the area of several first-rate cities. Such strength could be seen at a glance. So what if it's the Mystic Yuan sect? I came from Kuan Castle. What kind of scene have I not seen? Just bring me there. Kuan Arashur was ready to risk everything. After all, the people in Kuan Castle had always been straightforward. The strength of Kuan Castle was definitely similar to the Mystic Yuan sect. But now, if they wanted to compare with the Mystic Yuan sect, the Mystic Yuan sect would probably not even bother with them. Well said. Miss Wang, show us the way. It's too slow. Li Zongjio said and then grabbed the two of them. Boom. They rushed out of the carriage and flew towards the sky. With Kuan Arashi's strength, it wasn't difficult for him to fly alone. However, after a short while, he had to rest for a while, or he had to use his Yuan spirit state. However, Li Zongjio directly brought the two of them up into the sky, and it seemed so easy for him to do so. At first, Wana was shocked. However, her willpower wasn't something that ordinary people could compare with. After calming down, she determined the direction and pointed towards the Mirror Moon Villa. Over there. Boom! Under the state of using the hidden dragon art, there wasn't even the slightest bit of aura. In just a few breaths, Li Zhongjio and the other two landed in front of the Mirror Moon Villa. Chapter 689. The Mirror Moon Mountain Villa was a place where an expert lived in seclusion. No one knew his name, but he called himself Master Mirror Moon. However, this person had an extremely illustrious title in Jianghu. Master Mirror Emperor. Rumor had it that this person was proficient in mental power. No matter how one tried to hide, they wouldn't be able to hide from Master Mirror Emperor. In addition to his illustrious reputation in Jianghu, Master Mirror Emperor was also the teacher of many princes in the Imperial Palace. His name was also given to him by the Imperial College. However, there weren't many people who could catch Master Mirror Emperor's eye and be personally taught by him. In addition to being famous for his mental power, Master Mirror Emperor was also proficient in recuperation. Shui Wei could be considered a disciple that Master Mirror Emperor had taken a fancy to. Originally, she was only following her mother to recuperate in the Mirror Moon Mountain Villa. However, Master Mirror Emperor had taken a fancy to her and wanted to take her as a disciple. Shui Wei actually ignored him and ran down the mountain alone. She ran into the Heavenly Dawn Medicine Manor and became a disciple of the manor. When Master Mirror Emperor heard this, he wanted nothing more than to slap the Heavenly Dawn Medicine Manor to pieces. However, this disciple couldn't run away. Who knew how many famous and noble families wanted to become Master Mirror Emperor's disciple? Up until now, no one had taken a fancy to her. It was rare for him to take a fancy to Shui Yue. Recently, Shui Yue's mother's health hadn't been very good. Even Master Mirror Emperor found it difficult to suppress her. Now, she was about to reach the end of her road. At this moment, the Mystic Origin sect came to propose marriage with medicinal pills. These people clearly had impure motives, but so what? At this moment, in the main hall of the Mirror Moon Mountain Villa, a group of green-robed cultivators sat on the left and right sides. On the right side of the main seat, there was a well-dressed man with a tall and straight figure. As he listened to their conversation, the corners of his mouth curled into a faint smile. However, the corner of his eyes was constantly sizing up a young girl standing behind the person sitting on the high seat. There were two people sitting on the high seat. One of them looked very old with a head full of white hair. However, she had a dignified bearing and held a gemstone crutch in her hand. This old woman was the owner of the Mirror Moon Mountain Villa, Master Mirror Moon. People called him the Mirror Emperor. Sitting beside Master Mirror Moon was also an old man. However, this old man's hair was black and his face was red. His fingers were thin and powerful. What was surprising was that this old man only had one arm. The sleeve of his left hand was also empty. With the current technology, it wouldn't be a problem to install a prosthetic arm, not to mention the fact that he was able to sit together with the Mirror Emperor. Naturally, it wasn't difficult to see that this person was able to sit on the same level as the Mirror Emperor. This person's strength must be extraordinary, but now he actually maintained a one-armed posture. Obviously, he had some eccentricities. This person's status was not low either. He was one of the 7 managing elders of the Mystic Yuan sect. The so-called principal elders were naturally some of the elders with real power. Basically, all the big and small matters in the sect had to be handled by these 7 elders. The one-armed elder in front of him was in charge of the External Affairs Hall in the Shenyuan sect. All external affairs, including the deployment of manpower, travel outside the borders, and so on, were basically the responsibility of this elder. Elder of the Foreign Affairs Hall. One-armed Xiao Yuan. The person standing behind Master Mirror Moon was Shui Yue. At this moment, Shui Yue was expressionless. She gritted her teeth and only clutched the corner of her clothes. Shui Yue really couldn't bear to see her mother's painful appearance these past few days. Now, the young sect master of the Shenyuan sect had finally seized the opportunity to rush over and actually proposed marriage. Wasn't his intention obvious? He clearly wanted to use this elixir to directly take Shui Yue away. At the same time, he could also receive the Mirror Emperor's care. After all, Shui Wei was now the Mirror Emperor's disciple. Elder Xiao Yuan, I, Mirror Moon, am extremely grateful for the pale flame true spirit elixir that you sent over. However, as for Princess Jing'an's marriage, it still needs to be discussed in detail in front of the Emperor. Master Jingyue said. Her words attracted everyone's attention. After talking for half a day, they finally got to the main topic. The handsome man sitting below couldn't help but straighten up. However, when he heard Master Mirror Moon's words, he couldn't help but frown. What was this? Was she trying to take away the elixir and then push the blame to the Emperor Xingyan? Shuiyue's identity was no longer a secret. Shuiyue's true identity was the Xingyan dynasty's Princess Jing'an, a princess of a generation. No wonder she could receive the Mirror Emperor's care. The Xinyuan sect was also very bold. They seemed to be relying on their current strength to directly propose marriage to the princess. If they succeeded, not only would they have a closer relationship with the Xingyan dynasty, but they would also directly form an extremely friendly alliance with the Mirror Emperor. From then on, embarking on the path of meteoric success would be an extremely normal thing. This would allow the Xinyuan sect to directly break through the ranks of the same forces. This was also a very good opportunity. After all, there were only 3 princesses of the Xingyan dynasty. The eldest one was already married. As for the remaining 2, they were also very popular. After learning that Princess Jing'an's mother was terminally ill, the Xinyuan sect immediately prepared a big gift. The Mirror Emperor had previously said that Princess Jing'an's mother's illness was incurable. However, the Grey Flame True Spirit Elixir was a grade 7 elixir. Furthermore, it could only be found in the Xinyuan sect. Currently, no one could refine the Grey Flame True Spirit Elixir. These elixirs had already become the Xinyuan sect's most precious treasures. The fact that the Mystic Yuan sect's young sect leader could bring one out to save a dying person and at the same time exchange it for such an opportunity, it was obvious that the Mystic Yuan sect's plan was very thorough. Now, Princess Jing'an was most likely going to get it. Although Princess Jing'an really wanted to take the elixir, these people from the Xinyuan sect would definitely not let her go. Mirror Emperor is Princess Jing'an's master. We came here to arrange the marriage in advance. Moreover, Princess Jing'an's mother is also in the Mirror Moon Villa. After both of them agree, we will go directly to the Emperor. This way we won't be rash. If Mirror Emperor agrees, this marriage is definitely going to happen. We can also give our sect's sacred item, the Grey Flame True Spirit Elixir, to the princess. After all, her mother's health cannot be delayed. Xiao Yuan said intentionally. He deliberately mentioned Princess Jing'an's mother's condition in front of Princess Jing'an to directly provoke her. Moreover, although our young sect master does not dare to say that his talent is unparalleled in the world, even in the Xingyan dynasty, he can more or less be considered an outstanding person. Xiao Yuan said. These words were obviously very modest. Clearly, he was being courteous. Based on the look in the eyes of the Mystic Yuan sect's young sect master, it was clear that he did not care about anyone at all. You say it yourself. Yes, Elder. Gong Changhe stood up and cupped his hands at the Mirror Emperor and Xiao Yuan. Then, he gradually released the aura from his body. Grade 5 Yuan Monarch. As his aura was released, the corners of Gong Changhe's mouth curled up slightly. Changhe is untalented. After painstakingly cultivating for 22 years, I am only a grade 5 Yuan Monarch. However, Changhe believes that there are few people in the same generation in the Sacred Flame Royal City who can match me. Chapter 690. Gong Changhe's words were obviously meant to provoke all the young talents in Monarch City. However, he was just that strong. It would be very difficult to find a few experts like Gong Changhe. Where did you come from? Do you want to find an opponent so badly? Just as everyone was surprised by Gong Changhe's strength, an extremely disdainful voice came from behind. It happened to come from the entrance. Kuan Erishur took the lead and jumped in through the door. The words just now were said by Kuan Erishur. The style of his words was very similar to Li Zongjiu's style. Shui Wei also raised her head and looked outside the door. She immediately saw Kuan Erasure and her mouth opened wide in shock. Why was Kuan Erasure here? If Lan Kuan was involved in this matter, it would be a very troublesome matter. Therefore, Shueiyue was extremely worried in her heart. However, this scene was exactly what Shueiyue was looking forward to. Kuan Erasure was finally here. Everyone turned their heads. Who was it that dared to cause trouble in the Mystic Yuan sect? Everyone present was basically a disciple of the Mystic Yuan sect. This time, besides coming down the mountain to support their young sect master, they also wanted to better display the strength of the Mystic Yuan sect under such circumstances. Now that the Mystic Yuan sect's momentum was strong, they naturally wanted to be the first to kill their way out and then gain a greater advantage. Interesting. Mirror Emperor looked at Kuan Erasure and Li Zongjio. These two mere youths dared to barge into his Mirror Moon villa. Presumably, the people who flew directly from the city were these two. However, Mirror Emperor didn't say much. The current situation seemed to be a little interesting. Who dares to be impudent in the Mirror Moon villa? The first to enter were the guards of the Mirror Moon villa. Two white-clothed sword cultivators walked in and wanted to capture Li Zongjio and Kuan Erasure. "Uncle Bai, they are my friends," Shueiyue hurriedly shouted. The few people who were about to make a move exchanged glances with each other before looking at Master Jingyue. Master Jingyue also waved her hand, indicating for them to leave first. Immediately, the two of them cupped their hands together and left. These two brats had run too quickly just now. They had slipped into this place without anyone noticing. If anything were to happen, it would all be on their heads. Master Mirror Moon didn't say anything. Behind her, Shueiyue also realized that she had been too excited. Gong Changhe, who was in front, saw this scene. In addition, Kuan Erasure was exchanging amorous glances with Shueiyue. At this moment, he felt a great humiliation. When he looked at Lan Kuan again, murderous intent rose in his heart. Although he hadn't succeeded in proposing marriage, Gong Changhe had already regarded Shueiyue as his woman. For Gong Changhe, even if others took a second look at him, it was something he couldn't tolerate. Therefore, Gong Changhe had already sentenced Kuan Erasure to death in his heart. Since you are also one of Princess Jing En's pursuers, that's good. I also want to ask for advice from this brother's strength today. I want to let Princess Jing En see who is her true love. Gong Changhe's lips curled up as he spoke. He could naturally see that Kuan Erasure was only a grade 9 Yuan ancestor. The strength. How should he put it? He was indeed more powerful than the average person. However, in Gong Changhe's eyes, in the eyes of the Mystic Yuan sect, he was simply a piece of trash. Anyone who couldn't break through to the Yuan monarch realm was considered trash. There is no need for senior brother to make a move. This is a good day, so it's not appropriate for senior brother to use his sword. It just so happens that I have made some breakthroughs recently. I want to see how the experts of Monarch City look like. A relatively short Mystic Yuan sect disciple stood up and stood in front of Gong Changhe. It was obvious that this disciple had won Gong Changhe's favor. It wouldn't be inappropriate for Gong Changhe to make a move. However, this also meant that he had a slightly higher opinion of Kuan Erasure. If his junior brother were to make a move, it would mean that Kuan Erasure was simply unworthy of exchanging blows with senior brother Gong Changhe. Any of his junior brothers would be able to easily crush Lan Kuan in front of him. Who do you think you are to be worthy of exchanging blows with me? Kuan Erasure crossed his arms in front of his chest as he spoke arrogantly. Then, he simply ignored everything else and started to reprimand Gong Changhe in front of these people. You people claim to be from a first-rate sect in the underworld. This young lady's mother is seriously ill and is still lying in bed. You people actually used an elixir to threaten her and force her to marry an ugly person like you. Do you have any shame? If news of what happened today were to spread, the entire Sacred Flame Royal City would laugh until their teeth fell out. Reputable sect? First-rate sect. But Kuan Erasure spoke with extreme disdain. This time, it was Li Zongjio's turn to be dumbfounded. He immediately gave this guy a thumbs up. This guy was really good at acting tough. He actually dared to say such words and directly insulted a first-rate sect like the Mystic Yuan sect. He was getting bolder and bolder. From the looks of it, this Kuan Erasure was the real badass. Previously, he didn't put the pavilion master of the Changsheng Pavilion in his eyes. Now, he didn't put the entire Mystic Yuan sect in his eyes. No one expected that this dark-skinned youth would say such sharp words the moment he jumped up. No one would dare to not give face to the Mystic Yuan sect. Although everyone was well aware of this matter and knew what was going on, they didn't want to expose it. If they directly exposed the other party's intentions, then how could the other party continue to mingle in the future? How embarrassing would it be if he said it out loud? Even Master Mirror Moon herself didn't expect this brat to be so outspoken. He was simply too courageous to directly point out this matter. It was rare to see such an outspoken young man nowadays. Most people were as hypocritical as they could be. It was very annoying to look at them. Master Jingyue was also an expert in mental strength, so she only needed to glance at them casually. Even if she could roughly see what kind of person you were, no matter how many disguises you put on, they would all be useless in front of Master Jingyue. Therefore, Master Jingyue had long seen through the tricks of these young people. It was rare to see a youth like Kuan Erasure who spoke so directly and didn't show any mercy. On account of this Kuan Arashi's unconventional style, Master Jingyue would protect herself. Master Mirror Moon herself would choose to protect Lan Kuan. She didn't die today to give this young man a chance. Shameless boasting. How dare you insult our sect? Today either you die or I die. The previous disciple also directly roared. He was ready to cut the Gordian knot and kill this kid first. The rest could be discussed slowly. After all, no one would care about the words of a dead person. Chapter 691. Immediately, the disciple thrust his sword towards Kuan Erasure. The terrifying aura contained within the sword was aimed at Kuan Arashi's chest. Kuan Erasure understood that he could only pretend for a while with his sharp tongue. When the time came for him to fight, the moment would come. There was no doubt about it. Moreover, Kuan Erasure also knew how serious the effect of his words were. Immediately, the Kuan Wing spear appeared in his hand and blocked in front of him, blocking the sword aura. Seeing the two of them fighting, Elder Yuan didn't panic. Elder Xiao Yuan was no longer in a hurry. Previously, this Lan Kuan brat dared to boast so shamelessly. In that case, he would get his disciples to teach this brat a lesson. This disciple of mine is a little impulsive. Tian Fei, you have to be careful. If you break anything in the Mirror Moon Villa, you will be held responsible. Xiao Yuan pretended to be angry as he spoke. He seemed to be warning his disciple, Tian Fei. However, in reality, he was mocking Kuan Erasure. What he meant was that if his disciple wanted to cripple Kuan Erasure, he could do it with a raise of his hand. He wouldn't even touch anything in the surroundings. Let's see if you are afraid or not. Hearing Elder Yuan's words, Tian Fei's lips curled into a smile. Elder, don't worry. Tian Fei will be able to defeat this brat in 3 moves. Tian Fei twirled the snow-white longsword in his hand and immediately released rays of light. Then, a sword light emerged from the longsword and spread out like ripples in the water. Boom! The sword aura vibrated. In an instant, it rushed in front of Kuan Erasure. Kuan Erasure also circulated his Yuan power. Under such circumstances, if he was defeated in 3 moves, it would be extremely humiliating. Kuan Flash! Kuan Erasure shouted in a low voice and the spear in his hand madly thrust out. Immediately, it rushed out like a bolt of lightning. Boom! Boom! The sword chi that came from the front was also shattered by Lan Kuan. However, the instant he attacked, Kuan Erasure clearly sensed that there seemed to be some kind of power approaching him from behind. When he turned around, he realized that Tian Fei had already appeared behind him. Is that all you've got? 1 move is enough to kill you. Tian Fei said disdainfully. The sword in his hand was already stabbing towards Kuan Arashi's throat. Master Jingyue sat up straight and her hands moved slightly. Tian Fei wanted to kill someone in front of her. That was a little arrogant. However, just as Jingyue was about to attack, she realized that something was amiss. Then she sat down. Tian Fei's gaze and the sword in his hand had already locked onto Kuan Arashi's neck. Kuan Erasure, a piece of trash who had not even broken through to the Yuan monarch realm, dared to be arrogant in front of him, a grade 3 Yuan monarch? The strength of these sect disciples was different from that of unaffiliated cultivators. The bigger the sect, the more difficult it was for them to live like a prince. The competitiveness of these disciples would be even more terrifying. Therefore, to be able to stand out in such a large sect, one had to have gone through a lot of hardships. Therefore, Tian Fei's attack was extremely ruthless. He had already determined Kun Arashi's strength based on his actions. It could be said that Kun Arashi's strength was rather ordinary. In front of a true sect expert, Kun Arashi simply did not have the slightest ability to retaliate. Just as Tian Fei was about to stab Kun Arashi with his sword and make him bleed, he suddenly felt a gust of wind coming from behind him. This was a dangerous feeling. Tian Fei instinctively withdrew his sword and placed it behind him. It had to be said that Tian Fei's reaction speed was very fast. However, in front of the person behind him, it did not matter how fast he reacted. Li Zongjio used the Desolate Heaven essence in his hand to smash Tian Fei's back. The sword in Tian Fei's hand broke with a clang. Tian Fei also spat out a mouthful of blood. When the blood spurted out, Tian Fei felt a strong sense of dizziness. There was also a feeling of his strength being torn apart that was hidden in his body. Tian Fei could not believe that Li Zongjio's attack was so ruthless that it felt like his internal organs were about to be shattered. Bang! Tian Fei's entire body flew out. With a bang, he directly crushed a table. Tian Fei sat paralyzed in the ruins with blood flowing from the corner of his mouth. At this moment, a sharp pain came from his lower abdomen. Tian Fei finally understood that his Yuan bead had been damaged. But my Yuan bead. Tian Fei briefly sensed his condition and his face turned ashen. This was because he could sense that his Yuan bead had been shattered into pieces. At the same time, his body was like a rubber ball that was riddled with holes. The Yuan qi that he had painstakingly cultivated for 20 years had completely dissipated. Boom! No! Tian Fei immediately roared towards the sky. When Elder Xiao Yuan saw this, he immediately stepped forward and appeared beside Tian Fei. He poured Yuan qi into Tian Fei's body and glared angrily at Li Zongjio, who was holding the Desolate Heaven essence. What a vicious brat. He actually destroyed his Yuan bead. Destroyed his Yuan bead. Immediately, all the Mystic Yuan sect disciples present gasped. They looked at the young man who had been standing beside Kun Arashi and had not said a single word since the beginning. However, he had destroyed Tian Fei's Yuan bead the moment he attacked. Tian Fei's strength was not much different from theirs. Who knew that he would end up in such a state? Furthermore, even if there was a grudge between the two of them, there was no need to destroy someone's Yuan bead the moment he attacked. This was indeed too cruel. In the eyes of the Mystic Yuan sect disciples, Li Zongjio was the devil. Even Master Jingyue was shocked by Li Zongjio's methods. She originally thought that Kun Arashi was arrogant enough. However, Li Zongjio's actions seemed to be even more brutal and direct than Kun Arashi. At most, Lan Kun would only curse a few words. However, when Li Zongjio attacked, he directly crippled the elemental bead of one of the disciples. This was equivalent to destroying the other party's cultivation. In the eyes of an outsider, such a scene was simply vicious and merciless. Furthermore, he did not even care about his own life. Where did this Li Zongjio get the guts to directly cripple someone's essence pearl cultivation? This was equivalent to crippling Tian Fei. Previously, he was still calling others trash. Now that it was his turn, he had directly become trash as well. It made people sigh. Today, I will give Shueiyue face and not kill you. Li Zongjio kept the Desolate Heaven essence in his hand and walked forward with his hands behind his back. He looked at the people in front of him. Who was it that wanted to steal my brother's woman? Just step forward. Chapter 692. Once Li Zongjio's words came out, everyone present was stunned. They simply couldn't believe their own eyes. Was this guy trying to provoke the entire Mystic Yuan sect? What did he mean by, your brother's woman? At first, Shueiyue was worried that something would happen to Li Zongjio and Li Zongjio, so she had to protect them no matter what. However, she did not expect Li Zongjio to say such words. She was so angry that she stomped her feet. "Who is your brother's woman? How shameless!" She stomped her feet in anger. This caused Shueyu herself to become extremely shy. Master Jingyue had a strange expression on her face. Shueyu was the name Princess Jingon used outside. Naturally, Master Jingyue was aware of this. Gong Changhe, who was about to explode, could not hold it in any longer. The woman he fancied was actually Li Zongjio's brother's woman. He was simply courting death. Gong Changhe's strength of a grade 5 Yuan monarch instantly erupted. "Brat, I'll meet you today." Gong Changhe roared angrily. Then, his figure suddenly rushed towards Li Zongjio. He was using the powerful jade breaking palm that he was extremely proficient in. Immediately, he felt a fishy wind blowing in his surroundings. Boom! When Gong Changhe made his move, Elder Xiao Yuan realized that the situation was not good. There was something strange about that kid. Tian Fei was crippled before he could even see it clearly. Even if Gong Changhe personally made his move, he might not be able to gain any benefits from it. "Be careful!" Elder Xiao Yuan only had time to shout. Then he saw Li Zongjio smash Gong Changhe's head with his staff. Originally, this blow was enough to cause Gong Changhe to suffer a concussion. However, a ray of light appeared above Gong Changhe's head and directly shattered this force. Boom! The light that had just appeared above Gong Changhe's head was immediately suppressed. "My purple gold helmet!" Gong Changhe immediately cried out in alarm, and his body fell heavily to the ground. Li Zongjio could not help but wave the desolate heaven essence in his hand. He glanced at the desolate heaven essence in his hand before looking at Gong Changhe. "You're quite stubborn." Li Zongjio could not help but ask. However, when Li Zongjio smashed the purple gold helmet, it was no different from cutting off a piece of flesh for Gong Changhe. This purple gold helmet was a gift from Gong Changhe's father when he came of age. With a purple gold helmet, even if he was facing an epic emperor, he wouldn't be killed instantly. At the very least, he would be able to resist for a while. He had worn the purple gold helmet for many years, but he had never used it. Now, Li Zongjio had smashed the purple gold helmet into pieces with just a light blow. This was a defensive Yuan artifact that could withstand the attack of a primitive emperor. It was destroyed in Li Zongjio's hands, and it was in such a dubious battle. The cost of a second-grade Yuan artifact could not even be measured by gold Yuan or purple Yuan coins. It would cost at least tens of thousands of high-grade Yuan stones to buy this purple gold helmet. "You destroyed my purple gold helmet." Gong Changhe immediately pointed at Li Zongjio in an incomparably furious manner. He had never imagined that this insignificant Li Zongjio, a mere member of the Sacred Flame Imperial City, would be able to so easily destroy his purple gold helmet. In fact, if it weren't for the purple gold helmet, Gong Changhe's head would have exploded. It wouldn't be Gong Changhe's turn to clamor here. "Set up the formation." A mystic Yuan sect disciple immediately roared when he saw the situation. He was considered a senior among the remaining disciples. The remaining 6 mystic Yuan sect disciples immediately raised their swords and surrounded Li Zongjio. 6 swords were pointed at Li Zongjio. "Master," Shueyu immediately pulled Master Jingyue's arm and shouted when she saw this scene. She was afraid that Li Zongjio would be killed by the mystic Yuan sect disciples in front of her. However, Master Jingyue merely raised her hand. The scene before her eyes could be said to be extremely exciting. She had never thought that even the people of the mystic Yuan sect would dare to behave atrociously in her Jingyue villa. Master Jingyue's usual temperament was really too gentle. Now, she could borrow Li Zongjio's hand to teach the people of the mystic Yuan sect a lesson. However, she naturally wouldn't do such a stupid thing to make the people of the mystic Yuan sect her enemy. Master Jingyue herself was an primitive emperor powerhouse. However, a mere primitive emperor powerhouse would find it difficult to make an enemy out of the mystic Yuan sect. "No need. Your friend's strength isn't that simple." Li Zongjio's 2 attacks could be said to be full of lethality. This was clearly a wolf in a flock of sheep. It was almost impossible for these people to take down Li Zongjio. Killing formation, destroy. The swords in the hands of the 6 Mystic Yuan sect disciples started to spin wildly, as if they had gathered into 6 extremely terrifying sword auras that directly shrouded Li Zongjio. In the face of this terrifying killing formation, Li Zongjio didn't take it seriously at all. His figure flashed and disappeared from the spot. He's escaping. He was clearly locked in by the sword formation, but he was able to escape so easily. This was extremely inconceivable in the eyes of others. Li Zongjio waved the desolate heavenly essence in his hand. The great desolation chi seemed to extend out. With a whistling sound, it directly swept up the 6 of them, trapping them together. With a swoosh sound, it directly flung the 6 of them away. Bang! Bang! The 6 of them flew out of the house. As their Yuan Qi was locked by the desolation Qi, the 6 of them couldn't even stabilize their bodies when they were thrown out. He rolled down from the top of the mountain. Rumble! Elder, save us! They couldn't move because of the desolation Qi and could only shout loudly at the top of their lungs. Elder Xiaoyuan couldn't endure anything. At this moment, an extremely terrifying Yuan power undulation was circulating on his only right hand as it blasted towards Li Zongjio. Xiao Yuan was also an Yuan Emperor powerhouse. However, he did not display the power of an Yuan Emperor powerhouse when he made his move. He merely made his strength reach the level of a peak Yuan monarch. Even so, the power of his move was still very terrifying. The surrounding space seemed to have been compressed. Li Zongjio indeed felt a wave of pressure. However, the desolate heavenly essence in his hand trembled slightly and easily shattered the aura. Hand over your life. Li Zongjio directly faced the attack with his staff. Under the desolate heavenly essence, any kind of power would have to give way. Boom! Elder Xiaoyuan's figure was instantly thrown out and landed on the ground. He held his hand behind his back. There was a trace of horror in his eyes as he looked at Li Zongjio. He was grimacing in his heart. What kind of power did this kid have to be so powerful? The weapon in his hand was definitely not simple. It was a pity that if he used the Yuan Emperor's power today, the Mirror Emperor would definitely not let him off. He would definitely not let him take action. Therefore, he could only forcefully endure it. Elder Xiaoyuan, did you deliberately come to the Mirror Moon Villa today to show off your power? Master Jingyue slowly got up and asked. She also knew that it was time for her to take action. Otherwise, no one knew what would happen if Li Zongjio continued to cause trouble. Many Yuan King disciples were thrown down the mountain by Li Zongjio. Judging from the situation of the previous exchange, it was obvious that Elder Xiaoyuan had suffered quite a bit. Even with so many people working together, they still couldn't hurt Li Zongjio at all. If this continued, it would only be a kind of battle where all pretenses of cordiality were torn apart. Chapter 693. Xiao Yuan took a deep breath. As one of the 7 elders in charge of the Xianyuan sect, there was nothing that he could not accomplish if he personally came to handle this matter. Now that the Mirror Emperor was clearly standing on the side of Li Zongjio and the others and wanted to drive them away, Xiao Yuan would definitely make these people regret it. Xiao Yuan has offended you. Since Princess Jingon is not interested in the Grey Flame True Spirit Elixir, we will take our leave first. When he mentioned the Grey Flame True Spirit Elixir, he gritted his teeth and enunciated the words clearly. Shueiyue shuddered when she heard this. She did not know what to do when she thought of her mother's situation. You treat a mere Grey Flame True Spirit Elixir as a treasure? Li Zongjio said disdainfully when he heard this. Xiao Yuan sneered when he heard this. Kid, the Xianyuan sect is at a disadvantage today. You have hurt my disciples. I, Xiao Yuan, will not let you off. Xiao Yuan waved his hand and prepared to leave. Now that the Mirror Emperor was present, it was naturally inappropriate for him to make a move. Xiao Yuan would wait until Li Zongjio was alone, or when there was another opportunity, he would use his own means to make Li Zongjio realize his mistake. Then he would personally kill him. This was the most correct way to make Li Zongjio learn how to behave. One who had gone to look for Li Zongjio and Kuan Erasher had been standing in the corner and watching everything that had happened. The strength of the Xianyuan sect was unquestionable. When she saw that elder sitting together with Master Jingyue, she knew his strength and status. To be able to sit on the same level as Master Jingyue, such a person would be an extremely top-notch existence even in the sacred flame palace. Now, one after another, they had all been easily crippled by Li Zongjio. And now, they had all left with their tails between their legs. One had never expected such an outcome. How could things have developed like this? Er's original intention was to elope with Kuan Erasher with the young lady, because anyone could see that this was a deliberate trap. She was waiting for her young miss to jump in herself. He wanted to use a single pill to decide the marriage of his young Mississippi. Such a thing was not allowed to happen. However, she never thought that Li Zongjio's appearance would cause an unexpected change in the situation. No wonder this guy was asking all sorts of questions in the carriage and even brought her directly to the Mirror Moon Mountain Villa, preventing even worse things from happening. As for Tian Fei, he could be considered useless. This arrogant fellow had ended up like this in the end. Just you wait. Gong Changhe grabbed Tian Fei. In any case, Tian Fei was his loyal lackey, so it was only right to take him away. It was impossible for him to leave Tian Fei here. However, before he walked in front of Li Zongjio, he left behind some harsh words. Ahem, when did I say that you can leave? Li Zongjio coughed a few times and looked at the two men when he saw that Xiao Yuan and the others were about to step out of the door. Xiao Yuan's eyelids twitched and his right hand clenched into a fist. A loud cracking sound was heard. This brat was clearly asking for a yard after taking an inch. Insatiable. He did not take the one-armed Xiao Yuan seriously at all. It's not impossible for me to forgive your offense. Either each of you leave behind an arm or hand over the gray flame true spirit pill. Li Zongjio said indifferently. He sounded very serious and did not sound like he was joking at all. However, anyone with a normal brain would think that there was something wrong with Li Zongjio's brain. The experts of the Mystic Yuan sect in front of them only gave face to the Mirror Emperor and didn't bother with you. But now, you're actually pushing your luck. You're jealous and arrogant. You're taking advantage of them and even threaten to make them hand over the pale flame true spirit pill before you forgive them. Otherwise, it would be too hilarious to just leave an arm behind. It was clearly aimed at Xiao Yuan's remaining right hand. Mirror Emperor's expression became somewhat meaningful. Until now, Mirror Emperor had been able to suppress what Li Zongjio and Kuan Erasher had done. Although Tian Fei was injured, he could only blame himself for being inferior. There was also Gong Changhe. Although his purple golden helmet was smashed, he was still alive. If Yi Shiwen wanted to settle the score with him, he would have to wait until he had enough strength to settle the score with Yi Shiwen. However, Li Zongjio's current behavior was already equivalent to taking the initiative to provoke him. Such behavior was an act of overestimating one's own capabilities in the eyes of anyone. Did he really think that he was not a match for the other party just because they did not make a fuss about it? What did you say? Xiao Yuan was already starting to get excited. He had never thought that Li Zongjio would actually say such a thing. Although there was an agreement among the primitive emperor experts that they could not casually display their primitive emperor strength, such strength would definitely be extremely destructive. The city walls that tens of thousands of people had worked day and night to build would probably be turned into a pile of ruins in just one move. It was basically a waste of manpower and resources for an primitive emperor to make a move. It was better when one was in the wilderness. It did not matter if one could destroy the mountains and rivers. However, if one went overboard, the heavens would naturally punish one. However, if one took the initiative to provoke an primitive emperor expert in the city, the nature of the situation would be different. It was only right for an primitive emperor expert to kill one. Even some of the destruction would be the responsibility of one's side. If one died, one's family would have to repay this huge debt. They would even have to compensate for the damage to the primitive emperor's reputation. It could be seen that as long as one did not take the initiative to provoke an primitive emperor expert, it was still relatively safe. However, if one took the initiative to provoke an primitive emperor, just like Li Zongjio, the outcome would be one's own death. Leave behind the elixir, or the three of you, leave behind 3 of your arms. Do you understand now? Li Zongjio said faintly. If he let these people go, Li Zongjio would lose face in the future. How could people who had offended the great evil lord walk out of here safely? That was because Li Zongjio was still relatively low-key. According to the character of Li Zongjio in his previous life, these 3 people would have been beheaded long ago. How could they continue to breathe freely here? And just like what Li Zongjio said, the reason why he did not kill them now was to give face to Shueiyue. Xiao Yuan could not help but laugh when he heard this. It had been a long time since he heard such arrogant words. This was clearly giving him a chance to kill Li Zongjio. Good, very good. Xiao Yuan looked at Li Zongjio and laughed loudly. Chapter 694. Mirror Emperor extended her hand and blocked Shueiyue behind her. In the end, she sighed helplessly. Li Zongjio's performance today had really impressed Master Mirror Moon. However, it was a pity that he wasn't in too much of a hurry to seek his own death. Although he could have survived today's tribulation, Li Zongjio's actions were a little too arrogant. Master, this is your friend's own choice. You can't blame anyone else, Master Mirror Moon said slowly. Then, Master Mirror Moon waved her hand. Kuan Erashur walked to the side and greeted Shueiyue. It was definitely right to leave the rest to Li Zongjio. Given Li Zongjio's strength, it was very normal for him to cripple these people. Kuan Erashur did not doubt this at all. You want my Mystic Yuan Sex elixir pills? Sure, let me see how capable you are. A tyrannical aura was suddenly released from Xiao Yuan's body. At this moment, the empty sleeve of his left hand suddenly twisted into a sharp long sword. Mystic Yuan Pierce. Xiao Yuan took the initiative to attack Li Zongjio. The power of this move had already surpassed the peak of the Yuan monarch realm. It was enough to see that the surrounding space had already become extremely cold. As the principal elder of the Mystic Yuan sect, he naturally had to have some ability. The Mystic Yuan Pierce was only considered an ordinary Yuan technique in the Mystic Yuan sect. However, in the hands of Xiao Yuan, the terrifying power it produced was not something an ordinary Yuan monarch powerhouse could withstand. This move had already used the strength of a Yuan monarch. Ha! Foolish fellow, how dare you provoke an Yuan monarch powerhouse? Gong Changhe was ecstatic. Now that Li Zongjio had offended Elder Xiao Yuan would definitely crush him. The dignity of an Yuan monarch powerhouse could not be challenged so easily. Gong Changhe could only watch as the arrogant Li Zongjio died. Not only that, but Elder Xiao Yuan also wanted Li Zongjio's life and the weapon that belonged to Li Zongjio. Sigh. Li Zongjio shook his head helplessly. I was kind-hearted and wanted to give all living beings more chances. But, these foolish living beings, Li Zongjio immediately held the desolate heaven essence in his hand and smashed it in front of him, directly breaking Xiao Yuan's aura. Elder Xiao Yuan was taken aback. He had already raised his power to the Yuan Emperor realm, but Li Zongjio still managed to break through it with a single move. When Li Zongjio made another move, Xiao Yuan was shocked again. What the fuck? Li Elder Xiao Yuan's body, Xiao Yuan Monarch's body, Xiao Yuan Monarch. Boom. Xiao Yuan Monarch was immediately sent flying. Boom. He slammed his head against the beam of the door and almost broke a tooth in his mouth. His body fell to the ground. It seems like the few of you have chosen to leave your hands behind. Li Zongjio's face was cold as he waved his hand. Suddenly, the vast flying knife with a trace of cold light flew towards Xiao Yuan's arm. Elder Xiao Yuan Monarch had just stood up when he felt a sharp pain coming from his arm. Hiss! But one of his arms was chopped off. Xiao Yuan Monarch did not even have time to react. A dignified primitive emperor's arm was easily chopped off just like that. Although Xiao Yuan Monarch was only a first-grade Yuan Monarch, it was very difficult to injure an Yuan Monarch expert. However, Li Zongjio had done it so easily. So what if he was an Yuan Monarch? In his previous life, once Li Zongjio became the evil lord, the number of sovereign experts he had killed was not small. It was basically as easy as stepping on an ant to kill a person in the Yuan Emperor realm. My hand! Xiao Yuan Monarch suddenly shouted. He could not even pick up his hand that had fallen to the ground because he had lost one of his hands. Such a situation was no doubt shocking to Xiao Yuan. When Master Jingyue saw this scene, she sucked in a breath of cold air. What was going on? Li Zongjio seemed a little strange from the start. This was because even Master Mirror Moon was unable to see through Li Zongjio. It seemed that the power within Li Zongjio's body was extremely terrifying. Therefore, even now, Master Jingyue could not see through Li Zongjio's strength. Even Master Jingyue had figured it out at this moment. As for Li Zongjio, he couldn't even treat him as a young man. Although Li Zongjio's strength had yet to reach the Yuan monarch realm, his imposing manner was already on par with them. Master Jingyue was still very shocked when she thought of this. Your friend, where did he come from? Master Jingyue could not help but ask. And Yuan monarch expert seemed to be a lamb waiting to be slaughtered in front of him. He was not arrogant at all. He did not show any advantage in terms of strength or identity in front of Li Zongjio. Therefore, even Master Jingyue could not help but ask about Li Zongjio's background. My boss, Lan Kuan said proudly. With such a boss, it was really too awesome. If he were to tell others about what had happened today, no one would believe it. His boss Li Zongjio had actually helped him beat up in Yuan monarch expert. At first, he thought that Xiao Yuan was going easy on him, but now he saw that Xiao Yuan's arm had been chopped off. Such a scene could no longer be faked. Next, it's your turn. Li Zongjio stretched out his hand and the vast flying knife reappeared in his hand. Then, the vast flying knife in his hand rotated gently in his palm, as if waiting for Li Zongjio to give the order at any time. When Li Zongjio looked at Gong Changhe became nervous. Gong Changhe suddenly became nervous. No, 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 don't chop off my arm. Don't chop off my arm. I'll give you elixirs. I'll give you elixirs. The purple golden helmet had been destroyed, the mystic Yuan sect's sword formation had been broken, and even the last arm of Xiao Yuan had been chopped off. What else was there to say? If he did not beg for mercy, the outcome would be obvious. Li Zongjio would not hesitate to chop off his arm. Where there's life, there's hope. Gong Changhe warned himself in his heart, and then quickly handed over the Gray Flame True Spirit Elixir. When Shuiwei saw the Gray Flame True Spirit Elixir appear, her eyes were filled with excitement. If he wanted to obtain that Sangyen True Spirit Pill from Gong Changhe, he would naturally have to pay a heavy price. However, if he wanted to obtain that Sangyen True Spirit Pill from Li Zongjio, it would be much simpler. At the very least, it was not impossible. If you had done this earlier, your elder's arm would not have been chopped off. Why bother? Li Zongjio took the elixir and casually glanced at it. He knew that there was no problem with the elixir, and then threw it to Kuan Erasure behind him. Chapter 695. Grade 7 Elixir, Azure Flame True Spirit Elixir. How could it be thrown away? It was a grade 7 elixir after all. Wasn't he going to give it some face? Wasn't he looking down on a grade 7 elixir too much? Kuan Erasure reached out to take the elixir. He naturally understood Li Zongjio's intentions. Thank you, boss, he. Kuan Erasure then passed the elixir to Shuiwei, who was beside him. Shuiwei quivered. What was the meaning of this? Why did it feel like such a precious elixir was just a piece of candy in Li Zongjio's hands? Scram. Li Zongjio kept the desolate heaven essence and waved his hand at the people in front of him. In the end, he only lost an arm. The rest of the people could be considered to have kept their lives. After all, the Mystic Yuan sect wasn't weak. Li Zongjio had never heard of the Mystic Yuan sect. He estimated that after 1,000 years, the Mystic Yuan sect would have fallen to a second or third-rate sect. Gong Changhe also helped Xiao Yuan, who had lost an arm. At the same time, he also picked up the severed arm. Xiao Yuan finally gave Li Zongjio an extremely fierce look. He deeply remembered Li Zongjio's appearance. In the future, he would definitely find Li Zongjio for revenge. But at the very least, he didn't dare to say such harsh words. He chopped off the arm when he said so. He didn't hesitate at all. If he could do such a crazy thing so casually, it was possible that he might do something else that was extremely extreme. Therefore, Xiao Yuan and the rest chose to leave first. The group of people immediately left. Only after being beaten up will you know fear. Li Zongjio couldn't help but say. In the room, because of Tian Fei's actions, a table was smashed. He didn't know if it was expensive or not. I'm sorry. You can count the broken furniture as Kun Arashi's fault. Li Zongjio cupped his hands and said to Master Jingyue. In any case, this was the other party's territory. After barging in and destroying everything in the other party's territory, how could they not feel embarrassed? Hee, it's fine. It's just a table. How should I address this young hero? Master Jingyue hurriedly waved her hand. Kun Erasure just happened to force the elixir into Shueiyue's hands. Take it first. Anyway, I snatched it. I didn't spend any money. Upon hearing Kun Arashi's words, Master Jingyue couldn't help but want to take her shoes off. Kun Arashi's head. But the Jingyue's head. Li Zongjio. I'm the master of the Jingyue Mountain Villa. You can call me Jingyue. You don't have to be polite. Master Jingyue said. Although Xiao Yuan and the others were injured in the Jingyue Villa today, Master Jingyue was not afraid. She was not afraid even if the Mystic Yuan sect came knocking on her door. Could it be that she, the Master Jingyue, was afraid of the Mystic Yuan sect? Even if the Mystic Yuan sect was powerful, it couldn't be said to be above Master Jingyue's head. Shueiyue was shocked. She knew her master very well. To be able to say such words, it meant that she treated Li Zongjio as one of her own. She wasn't even angry at Li Zongjio and the rest. Instead, she was very appreciative. It's an honor to meet you. It was rare for Li Zongjio to be modest. After all, she was also an primitive emperor expert. If Li Zongjio's eyesight was not wrong, Master Jingyue's strength should be at the level of a second-grade primitive emperor, or even a third-grade primitive emperor. Such strength could definitely kill Xiao Yuan instantly. After all, Xiao Yuan was only at the first-grade origin emperor realm. Although he hadn't heard of Jingyue's name, it wasn't difficult to compliment her verbally. Shueiyue, have you collected the 1 billion purple yuan? Li Zongjio looked at Shueiyue. He had already promised Shueiyue that he would be willing to sell as long as she collected the 1 billion purple yuan. According to other people's prices, it would easily be over 10 billion purple yuan. This was already the price of a favor. After all, it was a matter of principle. Therefore, Li Zongjio didn't have the slightest concession. This was naturally the case. This, 1 billion is too much. Shueiyue almost burst into tears. She didn't notice this at ordinary times, but when she started to earn money, she deeply discovered that 1 billion purple yuan was too much. It was simply an endless number, and it was unbearable for her. Therefore, almost half a year had passed, but she still hadn't earned the 1 billion purple yuan. You are the alchemist who can treat Princess Jing'an's mother? Master Jingyue looked at Li Zongjio with some surprise in her eyes. She had heard Shueiyue mention this before, but at that time, Master Jingyue only thought that it was a swindler who wanted to swindle money. Therefore, she didn't lend the money to Shueiyue. That's right. Li Zongjio nodded. However, the consultation fee is the lowest, not a cent less. Even if Kun Erasure comes to me, there is no room for discussion. Li Zongjio said solemnly. Wait, Princess Jing'an? So you are a princess? Kun Erasure looked at Shueiyue in surprise. If they had come a little later today, Shueiyue might have been taken away and married to that lunatic just now. However, Kun Erasure didn't expect that Shueiyue's true identity was actually a princess. You don't know? Shueiyue lowered her head in embarrassment, but Master Jingyue was even more surprised. These people didn't know that Shueiyue was the current Princess Jing'an, but they actually charged in so bravely, paid so much, and offended the Mystic Yuan sect. With such a huge price, Master Jingyue thought that these two people already knew the identity of Princess Jing'an. Now, she admired these two young people even more. I didn't mean to hide it from you. I was afraid that if you knew my identity, you would feel inferior and kneel down when you see me all day long. A second ago, Shueiyue looked delicate and pitiful, but the next second, she became mischievous. You are so beautiful. Fortunately, you are a princess. Otherwise, if you stayed beside me, the little prince of Kuan Castle, I was afraid that you would feel inferior. I thought you were the daughter of some potato tycoon in the city, but it turns out that you are a princess. Kuan Erishur said. Princess or not, it didn't mean much to Kuan Erishur. However, in the future, Kuan Erishur still had to work harder. It wasn't so easy to marry the princess of the Xingyan dynasty. Chapter 696. 1 billion purple yuan? Although she didn't know why Li Zongjio was so obsessed with this number, Master Jingyue knew that Li Zongjio wasn't there for the money. If he was there for the money, then what about the grade 7 elixir pill? The blue flame true spirit elixir? Or perhaps Xiao Yuan's arm from before was worth far more than this. If it's 1 billion purple yuan, then the value of this elixir pill would be far more than that. Master Jingyue said. Would Princess Jingan be willing to sell this elixir pill to me? Master Jingyue said with a smile. With 1 billion purple yuan, she could directly let Li Zongjio treat her. Therefore, Master Jingyue was actually helping Princess Jingan in disguise. As an primitive emperor powerhouse, it wasn't difficult for her to take out 1 billion purple yuan. The few big banks had a special overdraft quota for the primitive emperor level powerhouses. Which one of them wasn't worth more than 10 billion purple yuan? If Master wants this elixir pill, then I'll reluctantly estimate it at 5 billion purple yuan. Xueyue's state of mind was completely different from before. She hadn't expected that she would have the opportunity to chase away all those annoying people and obtain a grade 7 elixir pill. In Xueyue's opinion, the young sect master wasn't a hero at all. Xueyue was disappointed that he had surrendered so quickly. She just liked to bully people who weren't strong enough. However, she couldn't sell the elixir pill to her master at a cheap price. Therefore, Xueyue directly increased the price by 5 times when she opened her mouth. 5 billion purple yuan for a grade 7 elixir pill was really something that couldn't be found so cheaply. Master Jingyue's face turned purple when she heard that her disciple had actually tricked her. She really didn't give her any face. This made Master Jingyue so angry that her hands were trembling. You mischievous brat. You actually schemed against your master. Master Jingyue pointed at Xueyue. However, if he could buy a 7th grade pill with 5 billion purple yuan coins, it would be a bargain. No one in the Mystic Yuan sect was able to refine the Grey Flame True Spirit pill. Even if the pavilion master of the Longevity Pavilion came, he might not be able to refine this pill. After all, this was a pill recipe from ancient times. Even if he could refine it, it would be very difficult to obtain so many precious herbs. Therefore, this Grey Flame True Spirit pill was definitely something that had already gone out of print. 5 billion purple yuan in his pocket was not a loss at all. If Master doesn't want it, then I can only go to the palace. Xueyue was also a mischievous person. When she saw that Master Jingyue was still hesitating, she waved the pill in her hand and prepared to leave. Wait. Master Jingyue hurriedly stopped Xueyue. She knew that this little girl was deliberately playing tricks, but she had no choice. She had to fork out the money. Otherwise, this little girl might really take the pill away. If the people in the palace found out, they might fight to the death. After all, this elixir was in the hands of the Xinyuan sect previously and it was not convenient for them to take action. However, now that it had appeared in the hands of this little girl, it would not be strange for them to obtain this elixir with a little coercion and enticement. Therefore, Master Jingyue was very anxious. This is the origin stone card from the Heng Tong Bank. Its value is definitely more than 5 billion purple yuan coins. Take it. Master Jingyue threw out a white card. By relying on this yuan stone card, one would be able to directly withdraw yuan stones from the Heng Tong Bank. This was a treatment that only origin emperors could enjoy. The rest of the people did not even dare to think about it. Hee deal. Xueyue saw this and immediately handed the pill to Master Jingyue. She also handed the card over to Li Zongjio. This should be more than 1 billion purple yuan coins. Is it enough for the consultation fee? This kind of left-hand to right-hand movement ended up in front of Li Zongjio. Li Zongjio was also not polite. Alright, no need to dawdle. Take me to see what's the situation. Li Zongjio said. Although Master Jingyue did not dare to believe that Li Zongjio could really cure someone, Li Zongjio's ability was not small. There was no harm in letting him give it a try. This way. Princess, be careful. One also came to Xue Yue's side and carefully served her. Outside the Jingyue villa, Xiao Yuan and the others did not go far. This trip was really too shameful. As an elder of the Xianyuan sect, he actually had his arm chopped off. Immediately, Xiao Yuan also approached and recovered on the spot. He used his lifelong skill to reattach his severed arm. The rest of the disciples also stood guard around him. Only Tian Fei, who had woken up. Tian Fei couldn't help but cry out loud when he sensed the true state of his body. All his hard work over the past few decades had been wasted just because he tried to stick his head out this time. For him, this was the most unworthy thing. Tian Fei's companions, who were on good terms with him before, were now looking at him with cold and indifferent eyes. They even began to deliberately alienate him. Now, it was impossible for Tian Fei to recover his cultivation talent. He would forever be reduced to the ranks of trash. For anyone, this feeling of falling to the bottom was hard to accept. Tian Fei, we will avenge you, Gong Changhe said in a deep voice. Tian Fei was once a loyal lackey. Now that such a thing had happened, Gong Changhe, as the young sect master, naturally had to comfort him. Young sect master, Tian Fei quickly shouted as he realized something. However, Gong Changhe also raised his hand. You don't have to say any more. Here are 1 million purple yuan coins. Even in Saint Flame Royal City, you will definitely be able to live a comfortable life. In the future, live a good life and forget about cultivation. Gong Changhe said indifferently and then threw a card. The face value on the card was 1 million purple yuan, which could be exchanged at any bank. This also coincided with the saying that the Xianyuan sect did not accept waste. Young sect master Zi. When Tian Fei heard that Gong Changhe wanted to kick him out of the door, he became even more furious. Wasn't it all because of Gong Changhe that he was reduced to such a state today? As for your storage ring, it was given to you by the sect. Now that you have voluntarily left the sect, I will return it to you. Gong Changhe immediately raised his hand and broke Tian Fei's index finger. The storage ring on Tian Fei's finger landed in Gong Changhe's hand. Although Tian Fei was crippled, there were still many valuable items in Tian Fei's possession. Gong Changhe must not waste them. Gong Changhe. Tian Fei was furious. Just a second ago Tian Fei, was still Gong Changhe's good junior. Now, in the blink of an eye, he had become a passerby. Even when Tian Fei looked around at his surroundings, no one stepped forward to speak up for him. This ending should have been expected. No one was willing to be associated with a waste. Good, very good. Today I, Tian Fei, will remember the young sect master's kindness to me. And all of you, my good brothers, I, Tian Fei, will remember. Tian Fei stood up and picked up the purple yuan card. In the past, he had looked down on it. However, it turned out that it could save his life. Only when he was alive, there would be other possibilities. Chapter 697. After Tian Fei left, Xiao Yuan finally recovered from his injuries. As he stood up, Xiao Yuan's eyes were filled with killing intent towards Li Zongjio. Mirror Emperor, since you have chosen to protect this brat, so what if my Xianyuan sect exterminates him as well? At this moment, Xiao Yuan's hatred for Li Zongjio was incomparably deep. As for the crippled Tian Fei, it was simply not a big deal. Elder, do you want to issue the sect's kill order now? Gong Changhe was also incomparably ruthless as he spoke. The sect's kill order can't be used for no reason. Xiao Yuan said with a frown. Li Zongjio killed our sect's disciple, Tian Fei. This alone is enough to issue the sect's kill order. Gong Changhe sneered. At this moment, he had already prepared an excuse in his heart. Unfortunately, he could only let junior brother Tian Fei suffer a little. At this moment, a few people looked at each other. What was the meaning of this? However, only one of them was smarter and immediately said to Gong Changhe, Young sect leader, elder, This disciple is feeling a little unwell. I'll go somewhere far away to relieve myself. Gong Changhe waved his hand. Wasn't such a simple meaning very easy to understand? Look at how smart this brat was. When the rest of the people saw that the other disciple had left, they suddenly understood what the junior sect leader meant. His actions were indeed too decisive. However, such a matter was extremely normal for them. Just by thinking about it, they knew. If a crippled person could bring value to them, they would naturally be more than happy. This was the legendary, making use of trash. This Li Zongjiu dared to kill our Xinyuan sect's disciple. Immediately issue the sect's kill order. With such a valid reason, it was only natural for the sect to use the sect's must-kill order once again. Xiao Yuan also knew the reason for the current situation. However, Xiao Yuan only needed to pretend that he didn't know and everything would naturally fall into place. Li Zongjiu, not only am I going to kill you, I'm going to kill everyone in your clan. Xiao Yuan's eyes flashed with fierce killing intent. Once the sect's must-kill order was issued, the whole world would know that the Mystic Yuan sect and Li Zongjiu were at war. No matter what background Li Zongjiu had, he would have to face the Mystic Yuan sect head-on. Only when Li Zongjiu was killed by the Mystic Yuan sect would this matter be settled. Go. We'll wait in the royal city. The outcome would probably be the same as before if only these forces attacked. They just needed to wait a little longer for the experts of the Mystic Yuan sect to make their move. With the sect's must-kill order personally issued by Elder Xiao Yuan, it wouldn't be surprising if the Mystic Yuan sect invited an Origin Emperor to take action. The entire Holy Flame Royal City was about to welcome a new storm. Mirror Moon Villa. In a room filled with the scent of sandalwood, a beautiful young woman who appeared to be in her 30s was lying on the bed. Her eyes were tightly shut and she did not open them. Both of her hands were tightly clutching the blanket on her body. Beside her, a maidservant was constantly helping her wipe away the sweat that kept coming out from her forehead. Her Highness' condition is not optimistic. This strange illness has persisted for nearly 2 years. Master Jingyue explained the situation. She was Princess Jing'an's mother, concubine Xian. Concubine Xian had been recuperating for nearly half a year. Originally, she wanted to recuperate, but who knew that her body's condition would worsen? The people from the Imperial Medical Workshop were completely helpless. Many famous alchemists in the city came to diagnose her, but there were no results. However, there was an old alchemist in the palace who said that concubine Xian was suffering from the cold soul possession. The so-called cold soul possession was just a more vivid description. When the illness occurred, it was as if the cold air rose from the body. Whether it was the body or the mind, it would gradually collapse. Moreover, there was no reason for it. It was as if the cold soul possession had suddenly infected the body, and it directly turned into such a situation. It was unbelievable. A perfectly fine person would actually become like this. There was no cure for the cold soul possession. However, it was possible to temporarily suppress the cold qi in the body with the help of some fire attribute medicinal pills. This was true. This illness is a little strange. Li Zongjiu recalled some of the conditions that he had seen over the years. Even Li Zongjiu was a little troubled. Is there no way? Master Jingyue couldn't help but ask. Shuiwei also looked at Li Zongjiu nervously. It is indeed difficult to completely cure it. This is because it is an illness of destiny. It is naturally very difficult to truly go against the heavens and change one's fate. Li Zongjiu said. When Master Jingyue heard Li Zongjiu's words, her eyes suddenly lit up. To be able to say this was enough to prove Li Zongjiu's strength. Ordinary fools would talk about things like being possessed by water ghosts or being possessed by spirits. These things that didn't make sense were said by them clearly and logically. Therefore, concubine Xian was forced to move out of the palace because the opposition in the palace was too strong. They said that concubine Xian had an inauspicious body. Damn your whole family. You don't have the ability, yet you actually want to create so many problems. Of course, people would feel contempt for you. Master Jingyue's own judgment only had one conclusion. This was destiny. Although such a mysterious theory was hard to believe, it was something that couldn't be explained clearly. However, as Master Jinyue's strength increased, she was also able to come into contact with this so-called life. Just what exactly was this incomparably mysterious thing? Naturally, she needed to properly research it. Li Zongjio was able to say this at such a young age. This also surprised Master Jinyue. Therefore, Master Jinyue really thought highly of Li Zongjio at this moment. That's right. Concubine Xian's illness is caused by destiny. Master Jinyue said. What do you mean? Do you mean that my mother should have such a fate? Shueiyue was also confused. Kuan Erasure couldn't keep up with the rhythm of the two people in front of him. What were they talking about? Originally, it wasn't. Someone forcefully changed your mother's fate. This is a treasure. Li Zongjio pinched his fingers and couldn't help but say. This was a good thing, but they didn't know who had used it. With such an item, it seemed easy to change someone's life. However, there were also limitations and some side effects. If you want to completely cure her, you have to find the person who used the fate-changing object and take it from him to change your mother's original fate. Otherwise, you have to rely on your mother's own efforts to change her own fate. However, the difficulty of this is no less than ascending to the heavens. Li Zongjio said, now that her body is extremely cold, it is a node of fate. I will use the obsidian flame to refine her muscles, bones, blood, and flesh. Then, she will be able to survive today's tribulation. Chapter 698. After hearing Li Zongjio's words, Shueiyue heaved a sigh of relief and thanked the heavens. She could finally see her mother escape from this abyss of suffering. Shueiyue almost couldn't help but want to use herself in exchange for that elixir when she saw her mother in so much pain. She wanted to use this elixir to make her mother's life easier. Although she knew that this was a very disadvantageous action, she couldn't let her mother continue to suffer like this. Fortunately, Kuan Erasure and Li Zongjio appeared. Isn't it too dangerous to use the spiritual fire to temper the bones? Master Jinyue couldn't help but ask. The spiritual fire was a very dangerous thing. If one wasn't careful, one's entire body would be burned to ashes. Furthermore, Master Jinyue had heard that such a treatment would require one to remove one's clothes in order to observe the flow of the spiritual fire in the body. If Li Zongjio were to do it, wouldn't it be? If Kuan Erasure were to do it, she would most likely die. Moreover, it's just a simple tempering to get rid of some cold air. Li Zongjio waved his hand and said, this was not a very difficult thing to do. It was not like the terrifying poison that had been deeply rooted in the body for a long time and needed to be constantly refined in order to expel it from the body. It was just using the power of the spiritual fire to help warm up the blood in her body. It was a very simple and normal thing. As he spoke, Li Zongjio raised his hand and floated above concubine Xian's forehead. Beads of sweat kept appearing on her smooth forehead. As Li Zongjio's palm floated above her, a stream of spiritual fire quickly flowed into concubine Xian's body. Master Jinyue, who was watching from the side, was dumbfounded. She couldn't believe that Li Zongjio had such a method. Using such a method to enter her body, the spiritual fire seemed very simple and normal as it flowed through her body. Li Zongjio seemed to be very familiar with the process, and he was quite adept at controlling the spiritual fire. In less than 10 minutes, he had easily nurtured concubine Xian's bones and other parts of her body. Imperial concubine Xian's tightly knitted brows gradually relaxed. After relaxing, one could clearly see that Imperial concubine Xian's expression had become relatively relaxed. She immediately fell into a deep sleep. Hearing concubine Xian's breathing gradually becoming stable, the few of them were very happy. Mother. Shu. Your mother needs to rest now. Li Zongjio said. Master Jinyue had seen the young man's terrifying means. She was extremely shocked to see that he had such strength. This was originally a very difficult problem, but now it was easily solved by Li Zongjio. Everyone came out of the house. Li Zongjio also copied a book that was suitable for Imperial concubine Xian's body to cultivate. This set of flying celestial art is suitable for her body to cultivate. If she wants to change her fate, she has to cultivate this book after she wakes up. You can't relax for a moment. Thank you, thank you. Shueiyue took the book and was quite happy and excited. She didn't expect today's matter. Although it was very ridiculous and strange, at least it could be considered as solving some difficult problems. Heroes indeed come from the young. Even this old woman can't compare to your means, Master Jingyue said. She was not trying to flatter Li Zongjio. With her cultivation, there was no need for her to flatter Li Zongjio. Instead, she felt heartfelt admiration for Li Zongjio's strength. It was said that Li Zongjio was already a grade 5 alchemist at such a young age. Even this point was enough to instantly kill Gong Changhe just now. Now, Gong Changhe could be said to be scared witless. When he heard that he had to cut off an arm, he also fled in a panic. This made people look at him with disdain. Such a person without determination and perseverance, how could he last long on the path of cultivation? But today, you offended the Xinyuan sect. These people will definitely not let you go. If you don't have the confidence to deal with them, you can stay in my Jingyue mountain villa. Master Jingyue was also very interested in Li Zongjio. She wanted to know what kind of situation and environment he was in to be able to train such a young man. With so many great abilities, it would be a pity if he was killed by the Xinyuan sect because of this accident. More or less, this Li Zongjio should be given some time. A mere Xinyuan sect is nothing. If they dare to come, just wait for their sect to be destroyed. Li Zongjio said indifferently. If it had been before, Master Mirror Moon would have thought that Li Zongjio was dreaming and delusional. She might have even thought that he had symptoms of madness. But now, after listening to Li Zongjio's words, he thought that Li Zongjio might have some other means. Even if he couldn't destroy the sect, it wouldn't be a problem to protect himself a little. If that's the case, that's even better. Master Jingyue nodded and said. Then, Li Zongjio looked at Kuan Erasure. Kuan Erasure, it's rare that Master Jingyue doesn't dislike you and allows you to serve in the villa. You have to perform well. I still have a lot of things to deal with, so I'll take my leave first. Li Zongjio stood up and said. He didn't continue to stay in the Jingyue mountain villa. After saying that, Li Zongjio left in a huff and didn't give Master Jingyue a chance to refuse. Kuan Erasure naturally knew that Li Zongjio was clearly helping him. Firstly, he could stay here with Shueiyue. Secondly, he could cultivate in front of Master Jingyue. Given Master Jingyue's strength, a casual pointer from her would be enough for Kuan Erasure to benefit. With Li Zongjio's words, Master Jingyue naturally had to give him some face. More or less, she would give Kuan Erasure some pointers. Of course, it was mainly because Master Jingyue saw that Kuan Erasure was a good kid. Although he didn't give pointers easily, once he opened his mouth, it would be very beneficial. He's so young, yet he can understand fate. I'm sure his realm isn't below mine. Master Jingyue looked at Li Zongjio's back as he left. In fact, Master Jingyue only said this. She didn't say it out loud. Li Zongjio's realm seemed to be above hers. Even so, Shueiyue and Kuan Erasure, who were behind her, looked as if they had seen something shocking that they had never seen before in this world. They hadn't expected Master Jingyue to think so highly of Li Zongjio. Perhaps Li Zongjio really had such a great ability. Chapter 699. After leaving the Mirror Moon Villa, Li Zongjio walked slowly, admiring the scenery along the way. When they passed by a forest in front of them, they heard rustling sounds coming from the forest. Qin Liang, do you really want me to die? Tian Fei's heart was filled with anger. Even his tone was filled with sadness, as if he was at the end of the road. He had never imagined that his best friend would be the first person to come after his life. Tian Fei felt that this was ridiculous, infuriating, and lamentable. Tian Fei, you can't blame me. The young sect master wants to borrow your men. You can do your brother a favor. Qin Liang smiled sinisterly. Tian Fei was indeed vigilant. He had actually hidden himself very quickly. He still had a few treasures on him that could conceal his aura. Clearly, he knew that they would chase after him and kill him. Qin Liang had to search for Tian Fei for a long time before he found him. Although Tian Fei had taken good care of Qin Liang in the past, killing Tianfei would allow Qin Liang to raise his head in front of the young sect master. Perhaps the young sect master would take good care of him and his status would be high in the future. After the young sect master took over the position of sect master, Qin Liang would at least be able to become an elder. As the saying goes, when a man achieves the Tao, even his chickens and dogs will follow. As long as he could obtain benefits, it did not matter whether he was a chicken or a dog. Qin Liang, big brother Liang, let me go this time. I will definitely not appear. I know what you want to do. I, Tianfei, will completely disappear from this day onwards. Given your current status and strength, killing me will be as easy as flipping your hand. Just let me go like a fart. Tianfei knelt down before Qin Liang as he pleaded. Now that his Yuan pearl was shattered, he was already a cripple. Qin Liang was also a grade 1 Yuan monarch. It would be extremely difficult for him to escape from Qin Liang's clutches. In fact, this was something that was simply impossible. Therefore, he knelt before Qin Liang, hoping to find a chance to survive. As long as he could survive, Tianfei was willing to do anything. Seeing Tianfei kneel, Tianfei used to be a high and mighty genius. Now, he was kneeling in front of him like an ant. When he saw this scene, his heart felt extremely sour. At this moment, Qin Liang's heart was also filled with a hearty feeling. Tianfei, oh Tianfei, I didn't expect you to have such a day. With your talent, it wouldn't be difficult for you to surpass the young sect master. However, in order to please the young sect master, you tried your best to suppress your cultivation so that you wouldn't surpass the young sect master's realm. I know all these, but so what now? In the end, you still have to kneel in front of me. When Tianfei heard Qin Liang's mockery, his kneeling body trembled slightly. Indeed, what Tianfei said was true. His talent was above Gong Changhe's. Moreover, with his aptitude, it would be extremely easy for him to break through. However, Tianfei chose to conceal his strength in order to save face for the junior sect master. Moreover, he forcefully suppressed his talent and didn't allow himself to break through. Such a great humiliation and forbearance had now turned into nothingness. If he was careless today, he would have completely lost his life. With your talent, think about it carefully. How can I let you go? However, you can rest assured that I won't let you feel the slightest bit of pain. Consider it a repayment for the care you have given me for so long. As Qin Liang spoke, he slowly pulled out the long sword in his hand. The sharp light was so dazzling that Tianfei's face instantly turned pale. He never expected that this would happen. Qin Liang was actually so ruthless. He didn't care about the past. Qin Liang, I, Tianfei, will never let you go even if I become a ghost. Tianfei roared loudly at Qin Liang. At this moment, Qin Liang slashed the sword in his hand towards Tianfei's head. This slash didn't require any Yuan power. Killing Tianfei was as easy as killing a chicken or a dog. Clang. Tianfei straightened his body, but the expected pain didn't come. Tianfei couldn't believe it. Could it really be like what Qin Liang said? There wasn't any pain? When Tianfei opened his eyes, he saw that the sword in Qin Liang's hand had been deflected away without him noticing. I don't understand. When you kill, do you like to talk a lot of nonsense? Li Zongjio casually threw the broken sword in Qin Liang's hand to the ground. Just now, Li Zongjio had witnessed the annual drama of betrayal and internal strife. However, killing a person was just killing a person. Why did they have to talk so much nonsense? So, Li Zongjio couldn't stand it anymore. Therefore, he personally showed up and broke the sword in Qin Liang's hand. As the dignified evil lord of this generation, he naturally wanted to make this matter more dramatic. Otherwise, why would this world be filled with so many wonderful things for no reason? It's you. Qin Liang saw Li Zongjio in front of him and immediately shouted. This great demon had actually chased after him. Immediately, Qin Liang let out a strange cry and fled into the distance. He had fought with Li Zongjio before, so he naturally knew how terrifying Li Zongjio's strength was. Furthermore, Elder Xiao Yuan's arm had been broken by Li Zongjio's sneak attack. Therefore, when he saw Li Zongjio appear, he immediately turned and fled. Could it be that this guy had appeared to invite him to a meal? Of course, he was here to take his life. What a coward! Li Zongjio threw the desolate heaven essence in his hand. The desolate heaven essence slammed into Qin Liang's back, sending him flying as if he had been hit by a mountain in the vast wilderness. He spat out a mouthful of blood. Then, Qin Liang rolled on the ground. He felt an intense pain in his abdomen. Qin Liang could not believe it. When he circulated his yuan power, he immediately discovered something that made him almost collapse. His yuan pearl had shattered. No! Qin Liang roared at the sky. This roar of pain was filled with fear and sorrow. In just a split second, Li Zongjio had crippled his 20 years of cultivation. The yuan power of his yuan king realm. The yuan power that was enough for him to become an elder of the mystic yuan sect and become the pinnacle expert of this continent had vanished in a puff of smoke. At this moment, Qin Liang felt a true heart-wrenching pain. Now that he's the same as you, what will you do? Li Zongjio looked at Tian Fei, who had a look of realization on his face, and said slowly. Tian Fei had been completely blinded just now. He had thought that he was about to face death. However, Li Zongjio's appearance had delayed his death. Now, he actually saw that Qin Liang, who had wanted to kill him earlier, had also had his yuan bead destroyed. This caused that person, who was high above and could easily decide his life, to fall into this bottomless abyss. People could not help but marvel at the speed at which the wheel of fortune had turned. Tian Fei's gaze was calm. He knew what Li Zongjio wanted. Since that was the case, he would fulfill Li Zongjio's wish. Tian Fei immediately stood up, picked up a stone beside him, and slowly walked towards Qin Liang. Tian Fei, what are you trying to do? Qin Liang looked at Tian Fei, who was walking over, and saw the stone in Tian Fei's hand. He immediately shouted. However, Tian Fei did not speak as much nonsense as before. He raised the stone in his hand and smashed it towards Qin Liang's head. Every time the stone smashed down, terrifying blood would splatter everywhere. Seeing this scene, Tian Fei did not waver at all. Instead, he continued to use the stone in his hand to smash downwards. Until now, Qin Liang's head had already been smashed into a pulp. Qin Liang's body fell into a pool of blood, twitching non-stop. Tian Fei did not hesitate to break the finger on Qin Liang's storage ring and took off the storage ring. This is his storage ring. Kill me. Tian Fei handed Qin Liang's storage ring to Li Zongjio and said magnanimously. At this moment, he was already satisfied to be able to smash this despicable person to death before he died. Therefore, he did not ask for more. However, it was hateful that he could not avenge Gong Changhe. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.